What's up, everybody? Welcome to that's just me. It's not not anyone else. I'm the only one here into Warhammer. But my live reactions, Warhammer Preview Adepticon 2023 online event. That's right. It is upon us. They've been leading up to this with hints and teases for a while now. Yeah, we're going to find out finally what in the world is going on over there in the Warhammer world. What are we gonna get? Are we getting something new, something exciting? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But let's see. I want to make sure. Is this still okay? It is playing, I think. Yeah, there's music. All right, cool. So yeah, I was asked by a few of people to someone in our Discord and a couple other people had mentioned like, oh, are you going to react to the Warhammer preview? And I was like, I don't know. Yeah, sure. Why not? So yeah, here it is, our first ever reaction to a Warhammer event here. Adrian is probably like would be rolling over in his grave if he were dead, you know. But let's say JJ is rolling over in his grave because, well, he's old, so he's probably is dead. But yeah, no, I'm sorry if my webcam's a little funky. I'm using my phone camera because normally I have my Sony set up, but I'm leaving on a work trip tomorrow super early in the morning, so everything's packed away. And I realized like, oh shoot, I need a camera to stream. So I have my phone up there right now. So if the picture is kind of funny or the color's weird or whatever, like it's, yeah, my phone camera it's good. It's a good phone, but not really, it's surprisingly not great for like a webcam. Like no matter how much I tweaked with the settings, it just looked funny. I think it's because of my lighting in here though. I have like purple lights on all over, so it's like freaking out the camera. But yeah, I get basically tonight, I don't know, predictions before it starts here in the next couple of minutes. I am hoping for me, I don't know if I'm hoping for it. I'm excited if there's if they announce the next edition of Warhammer 40K. Am I really wanting that? Not really, because I feel like in the last like 6 months to a year, like finally like got back on the bandwagon. I've bought a bunch of books and codexes and stuff. Like I'm in. I have all like this updated stuff. I've started to play again. Like I've played like more times in the last like 3-4 months than I have in the last like 12 years. And so it's just a bummer to have to like start over and spend a bunch of money on new books and everything, because that's the way Warhammer, like Games Workshop, does it. Is hey, you got to buy all new books and they're like $50 a piece. It's like, cool, all right, sweet. So do I want a new edition? Not necessarily, but at the same time I would be kind of stoked for a new edition, because I don't know, new edition just means new things, and if the teasers are to be believed, it's hinting at, so there's been the teasers where it like zooms in on the eye of the two different factions, and the first one was Tyranids, the second one is a Space Hulk, Space Marines. Space Marines are always part of the starter box, but if we get a Tyranid box, the last time we got a Tyranid box was back in, well, my very first starter box ever, which was Battle for McCrag. I think it's how you pronounce it, McCrag, I'm not sure. I think I've heard it McCrag before, so if that's wrong, whoever I heard it from said it wrong. But hang on, I just realized, hopefully you guys can hear me. Yeah, my mic is working, sweet. But even then, a lot of the minis that they had, a lot of the models they had were old. Like they've had some of the same, like there was some update or things added, I know, during that time. But there's also a lot of units from the Tyranids that are still original sculpts, original like models from like the early 2000s and even like late 90s. Like there's a couple, so it's like they're due for a refresh. You know, a lot of the other armies have gotten a refresh where they've kind of pushed all the old, brought in some new, like I know, shoot, now I'm like blanking on what armies that have been done this in the last few years, but I think I want to say like the Eldar. Well, like, yeah, they're not even called Eldar anymore. They're shoot, why can't I even think of their name? Let me just bring up. I don't play them, and I've never played anyone who's had them, so that's why like I'm having a hard time even, to be honest, thinking who the heck they are. Let's see. They said they have announcements for all their games, though, so not just 40K. They're going to have stuff for Horus Heresy, Age of Sigmar, Kill Team, and yes, Ranger of Shadows, Eldari. That's who I was thinking of. See, it's such a weird, like, I don't know. I grew up with them being Eldar and then Dark Eldar, and so it was just in the last few years they've changed. I think 8th edition or was it 9th? Was it this edition? I forget. I know it was fairly recent that they changed to Eldari and Drukhari. I don't know. I think it's kind of wild, but whatever. So they got a refresh a little bit, like a few years back when they got their new names and everything. 8th, yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, it's either 8th or 9th. It's pretty recent. But yeah, Necron's kind of got a little bit of an update with 9th edition, because like with Indominus that came out, like I got the Indominus box, had a lot of new sculpts in there for stuff. So a lot of armies in the last few years have been getting some updates, but Tyranids, like I said, they literally have some models that are from like the 90s still, have never been touched. So here's to hoping this next edition, if it launches with it'd be cool if they add some new miniatures in there, because just looking at some of their the armies here, like there's I'm not saying they don't have cool minis, but they're just very obviously old style Warhammer. It's starting.
I'm Mike, and we have got so much cool Warhammer to show you.
I am so excited to share it again, and it has been such an energizing evening. Adepticon is one of those founding events of the independent scene. It's one of the largest Warhammer events in the world. It is run by a passionate group of volunteers and folks.
Let me know if that's too loud or too
everything
quiet.
That is Warhammer, and we get to see over 1,000 of them in the room here and share everything we're about to go through with everyone on the line. I'm buzzing at the chance to get to do it again.
It was really, really fun. So we've just had the preview for the people at the event. We had, as you say, 1,000 people, 1,000 Warhammer fans.
1,100.
1,100, and some other people kind of around the edges. Really, really cool. Some awesome stuff we got to show off.
I really want to go to
Adepticon. You guys
Adepticon.
who are watching along on the stream, all that stuff. In just a few minutes,
like
I
I
can
said,
see there's about 30,000
I'm leaving on a work trip
tuned in
tomorrow morning. I'm going to be gone all
It's
weekend in
like
Nashville. So
3 a.m. in some
dang it,
of
of
our
course.
core demographic here.
Adepticon's the same weekend as this other
Absolutely,
conference
yeah.
that I'm
So
going to
do
work
let us
at,
know
so.
where you're tuning in from, guys.
well.
It's about, I think, 3 or 4 in the morning over in the UK. It's still pretty late over here in the US as well.
It's pretty late in the US. We're here at Central Time. It's already past 10. Eddie here was probably still getting over the jet lag. You were in the UK just yesterday.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we had an interesting flight over. It was not without incident, but it's all good. We're here now.
You visited many cities on your way to Chicago.
Yeah, well, so I can already see in the chat we've got loads of people. It's going flying by so fast. We've got the UK. There's some people, loads of the US, Denmark, Europe, China, all sorts of places. So the Shire I see in there as well. So thanks for tuning in, guys. We've got a really, really cool show. We've got loads of really fun stuff.
That's one game I've never tried. Games Workshop makes an officially licensed Battle for Middle-earth game. That's like all like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit factions. It looks super cool. I love Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and stuff like that. So like, I'd kind of be tempted to get into it, but it's like a whole nother rule book, a whole nother army. Like, it's just a lot. So probably won't ever do it.
We might be able to cover them as well. So Mike, before we dive in. Adepticon, obviously, a huge part of the event scene.
An inspirational part of the scene, frankly.
For Warhammer. You are Mr. Events for Warhammer.
I am.
So tell us what Adepticon means to you.
Well, so all of us who come to Adepticon, and I've been here many times, I came here many times before I joined Games Workshop, but it really inspired me into the sort of event side of the hobby. It's inspired me to run events of my own.
Star Wars Legion has been super fun from what I've played so far. Oh, nice. Yeah, I've seen that around. I've never tried it.
And events like this are really a representation of the community itself.
That's
and the community is really Warhammer. Without the community, Warhammer is nothing, and without Warhammer, we wouldn't be lucky enough to have this community. And it's really,
this is
large
not what I thought it was.
Adepticon.
For some reason, I thought Star Wars Legion was the.
Recommend it. It doesn't matter where you are. There are people come from all over the world to attend.
Like the flight,
I guess. It's
like the ships and stuff like that, isn't it?
Event scene. Adepticon existed before them all. And so it's been great to see it grow over the years, and I think this is the 20th year that they've been doing it, the 18th Adepticon. And my ears are ringing from the enthusiasm and the joy that
Or do you actually control units and stuff as well?
From the moment that folks started.
I've only ever, anytime I've ever seen Star Wars Legion, it's always just like, oh, here's a TIE fighter, an X-Wing, or a whatever. Like, it's never like minis. Oh, no, I'm looking here on their website.
And if you've never made the journey yourself to the Mecca that is Adepticon, make it.
Oh, X-Wing and Armada. Okay, it's a skirmish game. You get all sorts of characters.
Year in, year out, and telling you all about the latest
reveals. So I actually pre-ordered.
I think we should probably show them some stuff.
Absolutely.
All the good
I
people
pre-ordered. It's not.
stupid o'clock
I
in
think
the
comes
morning
out
some
this
places.
summer.
We should probably let them see some cool things.
But there's some new Star Wars miniature board game coming out this summer that I did pre-order.
The State of the Galaxy, the Dark Angels, the Arcs of Omen series
I can't remember what it's called,
led to the break
But there's some box set coming out, and it looks super cool.
Abaddon has sent out the Arcs of Omen, Vashtor the Arcaphane is now at large, and Angron is on a rampage, and there's perhaps one character in the entire galaxy who could stand against Angron. That's the Lion.
There
Lionel
it is.
Johnson is the Primarch
There
of
you
the
go,
Dark
Shadow.
Angels, formerly the Dark Angels Legion, and now
I know
he's
you've been
the
asking
returned
questions
Primarch
about
of the Dark Angels
Lion.
chapter. Returning
Lionel
Primarchs
Johnson
are a big deal. The
on the
return
show.
of Ute Gilliman. That
He's
was
back.
an era-defining
He looks
moment
frickin'
for
sick.
the inhabitants of the 41st millennium and for fans of the 41st millennium. It doesn't happen very often, and this is the second opportunity in my lifetime, certainly, to see a living Primarch return.
He's been deep in the rock for thousands of years. All is lost to chaos. But this is where the Lion appears. And this is where he makes his stand as a light in the dark, as a knight standing alone.
The mini looks sick. Like, I don't know if I'd ever... Like, I don't have a Dark Angels army or anything, and I don't play Horus Heresy, because I think these are for Horus Heresy, right? Or are these for 40k?
He's gone back to doing. He's found half of the galaxy completely subsumed by
These are for
darkness,
40k,
warp storms,
if I remember right.
chaotic
So yeah,
beasts.
I just don't
he's
have a
set
Dark
back to
Angels
work.
army, so I'd have to
He
start
is
a whole new
going
army to
reunite,
run
you'd
them.
imagine, with the Dark Angels chapter, and woe betide anybody who finds themselves on the other side of the battlefield
But
from...
honestly, I might just pick them up just to paint it, because that's kind of where I'm at now in the hobby anyways. I really, like, I enjoy playing, but it's been a lot of fun just to paint things and more the art side of it, so I'd be down to pick up the mini just to paint, honestly. I love how they basically gave that away in the tweet they did like an hour or two ago. It's like, oh, you guys like didn't even try to keep it a secret. Like they just straight up just posted a video with a lion in it.
The Lion has returned. A brand new Primarch has returned to Warhammer 40,000 to the 41st millennium. Some of you predicted it. Some of saw it coming.
Just a few.
Just a few, you know.
And is he brand new? Or
By the way, the game I was talking about, Star Wars Shatterpoint.
We saw some
so
of
it's
people
some
in the chat there
new.
commenting that he looks quite old. He is 10,000 years old.
He
so,
is. He
you know,
hasn't been sitting
let's-
comfortably in stasis for 10,000
Yeah,
years.
it's probably on like a stone slab as well. So
Skirmish
that'll do
game.
something to your-
Actually,
to your
I don't
back.
want to talk about that, Eddie, at this point in my life.
Fair enough. Well, so let's have a look at the
iconic
miniature then. So
characters from
we've got
across
some-
Star Wars
some shots
Galaxy
of it.
Clash in this new miniature
Absolutely
skirmish game.
phenomenal miniature.
Star Wars
Early
Shatterpoint.
contender, I
Prize
think,
players
for
collect,
miniature of
assemble,
the
and paint their own squads
One
of
the
heroes,
most
villains, and their allies, and
anticipated
pit them
Warhammer
against one
models I
another
think we've ever
in
had
intense
the pleasure
duels to
reveal
control the key
on one of our
battlefield.
live streams. Every inch
looks
of this
smaller
model
scale,
is
almost
just
like a Kill Team
dripping
game,
with
but it's
detail and
Star Wars.
iconography and just the raw, cool, gothic aesthetic of the Dark Ages.
I love this mini.
It's been difficult for
Holy
me
crap, that's so cool.
to even fathom how we got to the point that it was designed in the way that it is, because it's stunning. And then nothing that I could have expected was actually fulfilled with it, because it was so much better than what I was imagining. And I got to tell you, it was one of the better kept secrets of the studio. I could not see it myself until I think, a couple days ago. So it's been amazing to see the community get excited and make all the wild calls and whatnot. And of course, there was a video of a lion earlier today.
Yep. Could have been about anything. Who knows?
Who knows?
So loads of
about
really
anything.
lovely
Yeah,
details to talk
okay,
about
okay.
on this miniature. So we'll go through some of the highlights. So he's got a sword. He's got a brand new sword. So
He does seem to have one.
That's
this
good.
is
That's
not
great.
the Lion
Good thing
sword.
it's
The
a
Lion
sword.
sword is still with Cypher around the Galaxy Subway. At some point, maybe they'll meet again, but it's not this day. But he has another blade, which is more than capable of cleaving monsters in half with. He's accompanied by two Watchers in the Dark. These are the kind of shadowy forms that follow key Dark Angels characters around, and there is no more significant character than the Lion himself, and they kind of whisper to him in the darkness and kind of give him hints about where he might best put his service to the Emperor and defeat the forces of chaos.
Well, he's also got a shield there, Eddie, it looks like.
He does. He is carrying the Emperor's shield. So that is the glorious golden Oromite shield carried by the Emperor and now
dang.
carried by his son in much the same way that Gulliman wields the Emperor's sword. The Emperor possibly gifted or maybe inherited the shield of the Emperor. So when
Here's
he's
the
fighting
link
against
to
the
that
horrors of the
Shatterpoint
galaxy,
if
he
you're
can use the
interested at
Emperor's
all.
shield to
What I'm
deflect
talking
the
about.
deadly blows that might even lay
I like the
someone
minis
like
that comes
him
with
low.
it. That's
Other
a Darth
details on there,
Maul.
you can see that the details on his
Some
armor are
droids,
effectively scaled up,
Anakin,
more ornate, elaborate versions of
Django
Space Marine
Fett.
power armor. So he's definitely still fundamentally a Space Marine, right? He's a leader of a Space Marine Legion, and all the iconography of the Dark Angels in some capacity is kind of incorporated into his armor.
I actually think it's fascinating with the paint job as well that he's clearly got that green element of the Dark Angels, but there's sort of that original sort of darker hue to the main armor plates as well going on in the way that it's been put together.
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly interpret that armor as being black armor with a slightly green tinge to it. That's pretty cool. Obviously, the green of the Dark Angels comes from the Forests of Caliban. That's where that green color scheme comes from. And the black was kind of their original First Legion color. So the green of the Dark Angels Legion was incorporated when the Lion joined, basically. So it's a nice little touch that he's kind of got some of that hue into the paint scheme. I think we've got another shot of some more close-ups. So this might be my favourite thing, actually, about the kit. But there's so much cool stuff. But one of the cool things about it is that there are 4 different head options for the Lion. So you can sort of choose how you want your Lion to represent on the battlefield. So you can have your unhelmeted head, so he's kind of there as the general.
If I was to purchase this model, I would magnetize the heads. Is how I would do this. You can have the kind of hooded
option, either with helmet or without.
To be able to use
have a much more mysterious kind of wandering knight errant sort of vibe.
The secrets of the Dark Ages.
Yeah, or you can go kind of full-on lion helm. And
yeah,
have
I would totally want to be able to switch heads, because those are all sick.
With the Dark Angels over the years.
I honestly don't really like the one with nothing on. Like the first one, it's like, it's fine, but the one with him with the hood, and then the hood with the mask, and then the helmet with the freaking wings.
So some really cool options.
So cool.
And the Lion is a complicated character, right? So he's got a really interesting relationship with the Imperium, with his brothers, with his own chapter, with his commanders under him. So he is this kind of multifaceted, interesting personality, and you can kind of choose which of those you like and which ones you associate with and make the model to fit.
You're already hinting at a few things about him. There are questions aplenty that even I have about the Arcs of Omen book itself. What is going on with the Lion in the current?
Yes, so this model comes out alongside Arcs of Omen Book 5, which is the culmination of the Arcs of Omen series. The book is called Arcs of Omen: The Lion, and it will chronicle the finale of the story of the Arcs of Omen, which will see a huge showdown effectively between the forces of Chaos and the forces of the Imperium. On the Imperial side, you will have the Lion alongside some of the Dark Angels,
Arcs of Omen stuff
chapter,
looks pretty sick,
but
again, it's just like one more game,
Dante,
one more like rule set and like board and everything
the,
you got to get into in order to
angels,
play. So that's
the
like
Angels of Darkness
my biggest hang-up.
Stand
there's
against
just all these
chaos.
segmented games that you have to
side,
buy new rule books for. It's like, just let me play them.
So
I'll buy the models. I don't care. But give me the rules for free. Like I feel like they should at the very least do that. I don't have to pay like $40 to $50 for a freaking book.
So
like,
they're against an intercessor, so you can see quite a lot bigger than a standard Space Marine. And against Reboot Gulliman, he's the same scale. So he is a Primarch. They are brothers. Neither of them was known to be particularly larger than their brothers, so they are pretty much the same size. They're standard Primarch.
Everyday run-of-the-mill Primarch that you see around the corner.
He's original and best, some would say, for the Lion.
Indeed, it's true.
Yeah, I do know about Wahapedia and Battlescribe. I use both of those.
If anyone is going to stand on a rock, it's going to be the Lion, isn't it?
It does seem like what he does is a standard approach.
It's kind of his
job. Eddie, never without a good.
They're just not like easy to use. I feel like that's the problem. Like I wish I could just have a PDF that was like exactly what you get in the main rule book, but just in a PDF.
Close up on the Lion there.
Because that's the other thing with Wahapedia. I don't think
the narrative, the timeline is concerned.
Like you don't get all the cool like lore and stuff. Like you just get the straight rules, and it's like, all right, that's
bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. Maybe only a few centuries
at least the last I looked. I have not looked
live
recently with the Arcs of Omen stuff, so I could be wrong about that.
Just a very long
previously with other things, it's like very like to the point. Boom.
Well, he does have that effect in the miniature as well. It's one of the things we saw people commenting on. He looks older, and the reality is, for those who didn't pick it up earlier,
seems like just scrolling through it quick. You basically get the rules and the missions, but you don't get like the lore stuff.
Ancient, venerable veteran knight errant sort of thing. So you can imagine that kind of character, and this is what happens.
And
in
the
the Arcs of Omen,
artwork is so incredible. Like
wandering through the
again, like
Nihilus,
having the physical books is awesome because to be able to see the artwork. But even if it was like a PDF, I could flip through and still get all the cool artwork and the lore and everything.
Yeah, wandering out into the dark forests to take down the monsters that haunt the darkness.
And we saw that in his quote, his focus being on teaching them to fear the darkness in which they dwell.
Yep. Here he is alongside a Dark Angel's army, and you can kind of see how he scales
There's sometimes
some of the other units. So You know,
sometimes I
looks pretty cool next to a dreadnought.
Wish I didn't go with Ultramarines. I just went with Ultramarines because
iconography and color
I was brand spanking new to 40k. I had no idea what I was doing. I just like, hey, if they're on the box, so I'm gonna paint it. But now that I know about all these other factions, like, man,
if I say I can't wait to see the
Dark Angels would be so sick, and there's, I mean, Blood Angel, like all of them.
I think this is going to be a painter's
factions, cooler factions than just Ultramarines.
There's some shots from Arcs of Omen Book 5. So we can see here the Dark Angels and the Blood Angels fighting against the forces of first of Chaos, but Demons of Nurgle in this instance. One of the things that there's some really, really cool stories in the last episode of the Arcs of Omen. So I don't want to spoil it because it's got some absolute huge twists and turns. Even for those who've followed Warhammer 40,000 for a long time, there's some really nice payoffs to some very, very long-running arcs.
It is all I can do not to try and prod you to tell them more about it, because Eddie's given me a bit of a rundown, and it's been hard for me to not just want to kibitz about it with every single Warhammer fan that I can come across now.
It's very, very cool. So if you like the lore and the narrative of Warhammer 40,000, if you've been following it for a long time, if you're a fan of the First Legion, which I am, I've got a Fallen Angels collection myself.
Traders.
So, you know, I've got mixed feelings about the Lion, but he is the best Primarch, let's be honest. Come on.
I can't lie with that. We have more to talk about in this preview?
We do. We've got more.
Is this the Lion preview? We just talk about the Lion for the next hour. I think,
the last thing, though, to say about this is that in the Arcs of Omen Book 5, the Lion will fight Angron. So
the one mini that I really hope that they sell separately. Right now, I think you can only get it.
They will have a showdown in Book 5
in the box
I'm
set.
ordering this poster.
Yeah.
Or behind me.
If you,
I don't even think it's available anymore.
If you are a Lion fan or an Angron fan, please let us know in the chat who you
it was a limited thing
in that particular
battle. Can we do a poll there? In the chat?
I mean, maybe.
Oh no, it's still available. I really want the Vashtor model again, just to paint. I don't have a Chaos Army,
so you don't get to change it, but you can certainly.
But I really badly want the Vashtor.
Right, but that's not it.
The only way to get it right now is get Wrath of the Soulforge King.
In fact, I think we told everyone here it was the biggest Warhammer preview we'd ever done.
Which it's like, oh, it's tempting. You know, that I could start my Dark Angels army that way. But
so we are leaving 41st Millennium for a little bit, and we are going to jump into
$210 is a little steep.
It's Heresy first.
So I really hope they eventually release the models separately, which, based off of their Warhammer community article, it sounded like that could be the case. But
I'm Andy Hall. I work on the Horus Heresy team in the Warhammer studio.
Got the Vashtor the other day and split it with. Oh, I'm so jealous. My brother got it too. He doesn't. He has a Chaos Army. He doesn't have Dark Angels though. So maybe I should ask him for the Dark Angels. Like, at the very least, get started on my Dark Angels armor. Tell him I'd split it with him or something.
Small detachments call themselves the true
he's here. What's up, Jake? Hi. Hey, Jake. Do you want to? Maybe we could split it.
Of their culture.
Unless you're planning on starting a Dark Angels army, I guess. But I know. So you had mentioned that before,
really
so
big, extensive narrative of the actual Chthonian campaign itself. Then we go into a section that sums up what all of the big factions within the Horus Heresy are doing at this point in the war. We also have some new core scenarios for the game. So if you wish to play through the events described in the narrative, you've got some special scenarios that are themed around the Siege of Chthonian.
Yeah, no pressure at all. If you want to, if you were planning on doing stuff with it, go ahead. But if you're like, oh yeah, you know what, I don't really need the Dark Angels and I'm looking to sell them, like, I'd pay for them. I'm not saying give them to me for free. We can work it out.
On Space Marine Inductii. We've got a new type of consul, which is called a Decorian. We have the Infernus Abomination. And then the last thing in the book, there's a number of special characters.
Horus Heresy stuff looks sick too.
There's the two.
I love that old, like the old power armor that they're all kitted out in.
For this Imperial Fists and Baron Ashahaddan for the Sons of Horus, we've got models.
I love how it's just like a slight difference, but it makes a big difference, like in how it looks, like the helmets and stuff being more like beak shaped.
This is the first
studs on the shoulder. And pretty
series, cool. And we intend to keep going with these. One really important thing to say about this book is,
but again, it's another whole game to get into. I'm like, I'm not gonna buy a fucking box set for another game that I don't need. Especially the box set for Horus Heresy. It's like, yeah, $310. I don't know why it's so much.
That will appeal to everybody.
It's kind of ridiculous. Like, I'm looking at what comes in the box, it's not that much
that is
more
a
compared to
brand
like what
new
you got, what I got in, like the
narrative expansion book
Indomitus
for
box,
the
and that
Horus
was like
Heresy.
200
books are back.
Yeah,
$10,
so one of the
$250
things
or something like
was
that,
a
if I remember
huge
right.
hit with the first
So
edition
why
of
is
the Horus
this
Heresy were the black
$60 to
books. That was
$70
basically
more?
the main way that you engaged with the game, and they had loads of really
And
rich
it's-
lore and background
yeah,
and
if
maps
anything,
and all sorts of really
It's
cool
not
stuff.
more, that's for sure.
And
I don't know.
it's been a year since we've had.
It's been one of the biggest questions we see on a regular basis is when are the big black campaign books coming back for the Horus Heresy? And here we are.
So this book is the first of that ilk, and it's absolutely jam-packed with stuff. We heard from Andy Hoare there a few of the details about what's going to be in it. So there will be brand new
It's
miniatures.
got the full
obviously
measuring tools and
accompanying
rule
the new
book. Yeah,
campaign
but
book.
so did
But maybe
Indomitus.
more
Indomitus
excitingly,
came
actually,
with
is that this
the
brings
rule
new
book
ways to play. So there is a full Zone Mortalis set of
and
rules.
everything,
That's a
and then
hugely popular
it
way
didn't
to
come
play
with
Horus
measuring
Heresy.
tools,
It's
but I
obviously
mean,
loads
those
of
measuring
the best
tools
bits
cost
of,
them like
the lore of the Horus Heresy of
like $2 to
Ordering the
make.
Vengeful Spirit
Honestly,
or
I
various
have
different
all these
flagships
measuring
and
tools
glory
because these are the
arches
measuring
and
tools
the
they used to
battles that
use for
happen on board
40K
them.
back when I
This has
started
got
in
new
like
ways
what
to
was it,
play
5th
on
edition
the
or whatever.
tabletop,
So
on
it's like these aren't like
Horus's
new.
homeworld on Cathonia itself.
It's like literally the same
and
exact
the
like
characters that kind of lead those
the
battles
whip
will be getting
rulers
miniatures
and then like the
alongside
cheap
lots of other new
plastic
miniatures
like
that these new
measuring
campaign
tools
books
for
herald. So
flamers
it's
and
a really
grenades
exciting
and missiles
time
and
for the
stuff
Horus
like
Heresy.
that.
It's like the
So
next step. We've had the edition.
it's not like it's
We've got
a
we've had the kind of
metal
base level, and now this
measuring
is
tape or
diving
something
into
like
the
that.
detail.
Like
Pretty
it's,
exciting to hear Andy talk about it as well. Even when he's not on a recording, there's a certain driving passion that exists there for Warhammer and for the brand and for the game that it is sort of hard to rival, and it's magical to see amongst the folks who are actually designing and building the product. And also to hear him talk about it as, in his own words, inside of our regular meetings, a historical war game in a sense, and that we view the Heresy itself as a historical moment in the history of Warhammer.
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting thing about the Horus Heresy, which is that when people get really into it, they want like authenticity.
I'm an
right?
8th
So, like,
edition Zoomer,
people
so I don't
tend to
have any
go,
of those
I
tools.
want this bit of the lore. I read this story. It was really cool.
I didn't have
want
those
the
tools
faction,
actually. I mean, I
the
did. I used
specific
to,
company or
but I
chapter
didn't
that
for a
took
while
part in that
until
battle. And these campaign books
my
basically
brother
go,
just
here
sent
is
me
a
that
bunch
new
of really cool
box
stuff that
for
happened. And
Christmas.
each of those moments, each of those
You
battles
know,
gives you an opportunity
Exact
to kind of
replica
go,
of all the
that
stuff
chapter
I
was
had
cool. I want
before.
that
I'm like,
drop
oh, I got all this
force,
stuff
or I
again.
want that
You don't.
assault
It's
company.
not
Specific
useful in
list.
9th
Yeah, yeah,
edition,
which would
but
you
Would you be a
I
son of Horus
have it
or
all.
Imperial Fist?
Just fun.
Oh, wait, so in this one, I think the Imperial Fists are pretty cool. Right?
Fun
I'm a big
nostalgic
fan of
thing.
Imperial Fist. Also, there's sort of like a
So maybe I'd
But
make it
then
easier to get into
the
Horus
sort of- I mean,
Heresy.
it is
I can just buy the
Horus Heresy, right?
minis,
It's his game.
find the
It's
rules
his
for
game.
free
He has
online,
enough
and then
spotlight.
just
we can
He has-
go
yes,
for
yeah,
it.
that's fair.
So one of the other things too is if you ever happen to see some photos, if you're ever at one of the events we're at, we actually have a 64 square foot Horus Heresy Istvan Massacre battlefield with hundreds, if not 1,000, I think at this point, miniatures recreating the whole experience and some of the like scene for scene, shot for shot pieces
Pretty
of
cool.
cover art from the Heresy. So I'm kind of a big old Heresy historical nerd
Nice.
myself.
Uh,
But it's exciting to see.
Someday
I'm
I
gonna
wanna
change
go
my
to
answer
Warhammer
because I just
World.
remembered a cool thing about this book that we haven't talked about.
now
yet.
you're not going to be
So,
an Imperial
so
Fist
one
fan.
of the,
I don't
one of
know
the things
how
that
or
these books
when,
do is they let you, they
but
give you a bit more of the kind of
it's
rich
my dream
tapestry of
one
the
day to go
Heresy.
to
And what we know is that
Warhammer
some
World
of the
Nottingham.
legions and chapters didn't fall completely, or they had loyalist elements in them. So one of the things that's quite interesting in this book is that you get some loyalist elements of the Thousand Sons Legion join alongside the Imperial Fists for the invasion. So
Really?
yeah. So I'm going to pick them.
I would play
so
Horus
I like
Heresy, but I would
Thousand
just be
Sons.
picking more
One of my
Space
choices.
Marines
You're a
than I
fan of
already
these
have to
small
work on.
contingents.
100%. That's the
That's
thing.
me.
I have
I
so
was-
many
all
Space
right.
Marines
That's a deep cut one
that
that's
I
absolutely
need to
quite a
paint
sneaky
still,
for
but
those who are
even
big
put
fans.
together. I have
Cool.
Space
Okay,
Marines
so
on sprues.
that's Horus Heresy. Really
so
cool.
it'd be
This
kind
book's
of
gonna be
wild
accompanied
of
by
me to
loads
just
of
be
new
like,
stuff,
yep,
Zone
let's
Mortalis
add
rules,
like
brand new
100
miniatures,
more.
all sorts of cool things. We are now going to jump to the mortal realms, where something ancient and prehistoric is.
It's a good cut to jump from the immortal legions of the Space Marines, many of whom die constantly in the Horus Heresy, into the mortal realms of the Age of Sigmar.
Flawless segue.
I wonder if we're going to talk about the old world. Is that what the new game that they keep hinting at is called? I'm stoked about that because I loved original. That's what I first played was this Warhammer Fantasy. So when the old world comes out, I really hope it's like that similar like old rule book and stuff like that, old rules. Oh, it's so good. They didn't say they're going to talk about that on the stream, but you never know. They might sneak it in. I hope that's not all they have for 40K. They obviously have to have more because, yeah, they haven't addressed the whole Tyranid Space Hulk thing at all. So they must be they're going to circle back. That'll probably be what they ended on is the big, like, all right, and the last thing is new edition this summer. Seraphon are here to save the mortal realms. Seraphon looks like a fun army. Like if I was to really get into Age of Sigmar, I have the Dominion box, but if I was to actually get into it, I might go Seraphon because it's something different than humans and orcs. It's something different from like robots and skeleton. Like it's so different. They're lizards or dinosaurs. Like they're really cool.
I feel like a 12-year-old again. I want to name all of them some form of Saurus. I want to talk about how much a bunch of clever girls these particular models are. I am excited about this. As someone who's relatively new to Age of Sigmar, this is the army that got me into it.
Yep.
That's
to
awesome.
begin with, and I am.
They look sick. I love the sculpts. Like they're so clean and crisp. And
well, maybe not for my wallet, but forgetting that part, I'm just excited to collect them personally.
Well, so Lizardmen was my first army when I started playing Warhammer.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So
I know I could get them for Age of Sigmar, but that's what I'm saying. Like if I played Age of Sigmar more, I would. At this point, I have like the Dominion box, but again, I haven't even. I've only opened it to take the rule books out. I haven't put together any of the minis. Like I have not touched that at all because I've been so focused on 40k stuff. So if I was like more into it and I had someone to like play with too, I might start. I would totally jump into the Seraphon.
Are they reptilian or are they more like avian?
I mean, so that they are effectively the dreams of frogs from another dimension. So I think the evolutionary tree probably doesn't really apply.
That's a really good point. Dinosaur monster heroes from space.
Absolutely, but the models are incredible. I think if you are a painter, the Seraphon have leaped up the list of armies that would be a treat, because not only do you get to play with incredible color schemes for them, but the new miniatures are so detailed.
That's what looks so fun. Is like
wonderful.
just
this is an alternate
more exciting colors than like just Space Marines.
There's some really nice new color schemes actually in the Seraphon battle tome that's on its way. One of the things that the studio have basically done is gone, you can paint them in much more varied colors. We've shown that in much more varied ways than maybe the last few battle tomes have. One of the things that's happening in the Mortal Realms,
that's sick color scheme, to be honest. Like the white
one with the realm they're in.
albino
So
like
fire,
lizard thing.
I
would paint the
they're like flushed with life energy.
Dinosaur he's riding
a
different color.
That into the various different realms.
The
So if you want to
Agrodon or whatever.
Make your Seraphon your own and place them somewhere.
But I like that white,
really
those
ground
white
them,
scales. It's
or
sick.
you can kind of lean into their classic aesthetic. And what you see here actually is a throwback with that color scheme to a very old concept of blessed by the old ones. So some Seraphon, some Lizardmen would be spawned albino, and when that was true, they would be seen as one of the old ones had intervened and gone, this person is marked for greatness. So they would be marked out as champion, given the best weapons and war gear. They'd be bigger and stronger than other Seraphon. And that's what you're seeing there in the Scar Veteran on Agrodon. This is a separate kit from the other unit. And again, that is a big... You don't quite get the scale of it from that, but you can kind of get a sense of it from the base. That is about the size of a Dracoth. That is a big old monster.
Massive space dinosaur. And I love your point there about the diversity of the Seraphon, that they, depending upon the realm that they're in, there's all that duality of the starfaring, the star lizardmen, as it were, as well as the ones that are actually more in tune with and more sort of corporeal within the realms that they've chosen. It's a fascinating duality that the faction provides you to sort of play it in a wide variety of different ways, both thematically and in gameplay terms.
Yeah. And that's still true in the new battle tome and the
so
new
are these because the Seraphon have been in Age of Sigmar, so are these just new minis? Is that what they're talking about here? Because they almost made it seem like, oh hey, Seraphon are here to fight, like as if they haven't been. But they definitely have been. So that's what's like. I'm just kind of confused by their announcement here, because
pockets of the ziggurats,
sleepy dinos.
Yeah, and they were like, oh, I didn't know we had all these eggs. They've woken up.
So that's what I'm guessing. They're just announcing these new minis. Is all, because it's like they've been here, but their wording on that little like video said like they're here to fight. They're here to save the mortal realms. It's like, well, they've been here.
Kroxigor war spawned, and these are built and live for battle. So whereas a normal Kroxigor in times of peace,
Kroxigor, those are sick. Those are giant crocodiles
or move heavy loads around.
Frickin'
These guys want none of that.
Tooth
they are
axe.
just angry, massive crocodiles that just want to rip into enemy units.
Angry, massive, heroic saviors of the mortal realms.
Sure,
crocodiles.
I mean they're sort of heroic, so they're about as chaotic and destructive as you can be while still being on Team Order. I think.
Absolutely, still good guys.
And here's a shot of the whole Seraphon range, kind of as it all comes together, and you get a sense now of all those new units that we've seen, and how they kind of come together to make just an incredible looking faction. So everything about the Seraphon army, every new kit, I think is a winner. They're just such a lovely looking army.
I cannot wait to collect them myself, Eddie.
There is, of course, a battle tome on the way. We can now show you the cover, featuring as it does an Agrodon Lancer champion.
Oh, okay, so that's more the announcement,
Brand new
that they're
battle tome
finally
obviously
getting
brings with it all the new rules
a
you'll
new
need to
battle
play with the
tome
Seraphon.
and some new minis.
Some of the
Okay.
existing kits still stick around. So
It wasn't
things
clear
like,
at first what
the
exactly was
Stegodons,
the announcement was,
Carnosaur,
but that
most
makes
of
sense.
the big monsters that are relatively recent kits that are still really nice stick around. But all of those new things we've seen are added to it as well. So it's a pretty big army now in terms of the number of war scrolls you get to choose from.
Yeah, it really feels like it's fit properly into the Age of Sigmar universe, heavily revitalized, and again, a bunch of clever girls there in those units.
The first place you will be able to get hold of the new Seraphon and the new Battle Tome is an army box, which is on its way fairly soon. And inside this box, you will get these units. So the Battle Tome, 2 units of Raptidons, the Slanmade Priest, and a unit of Saurus. And then that will be followed swiftly afterwards by the release of all the rest of the Seraphon models that we've seen. So if you are a Seraphon fan, there is a really, really good few months ahead of you.
Dang it. Man, my poor wallet.
So pretty cool.
It's exciting. I think we have a bunch of other things to cover for Age of Sigmar.
We were about halfway through Age of Sigmar.
Only halfway.
So there's loads of cool stuff for Age of Sigmar.
Well, you talked about the fact that we have the Seraphon coming soon. What else do we have before we get to the Seraphon?
Let's have a look at the video and see what happens.
A new era of death. Yeah, I love those models. Those sculpts are sick. Ooh. Oh. Okay. See, that's the other... It's so hard for me. So with 40K, to be honest, there's not a lot, like a lot of the armies I'm like, I don't really care about. Like, yeah, Space Marines are fine. Like, they're cool because they're just like, all right, they're like the good guys and they get all the cool models. And Necrons are cool because they're freaking just like, well, they're skeletons, but for, you know, in the future. Zombies in the future. But Age of Sigmar, I love so many of the armies. Like, I love, like, the Osiarch Bone Reapers and the whatever, the other one they just announced it, Soul Blights or whatever. Like,
so
I've also multiple times almost bought starter kits for those, starter boxes for those armies, because they're so cool. I love the armies of death.
Never gets enough credit. It's pretty amazing. I'm always entertained by it. But tell us about these models.
Yeah, so we've got 2 new heroes coming for Grand Alliance Death and 2 new battle tomes accompanying them. So we have the Soulblight Gravelords and a named vampire hero, and the Osiarch Bone Reapers, and a new generic hero that they can add into their forces. Yep. So I think we've got some pictures of the models we can bring up on screen and have a look.
And you should talk about the Osiarch first, but I love the way you describe
so sick.
They're both really, really cool. So this is the Mortisan Ossifactor, and effectively this is a mage who can construct units, and their particular speciality amongst the Mortisans is that they build the biggest, largest, most destructive units. So this is in game terms, this is a buff unit for your biggest, toughest units. Make them a little bit more durable, or you can make them a little bit better at killing stuff. So if you've gone for an elite, or you've gone for kind of monster-heavy Osiarch force, this is probably the kind of hero you put into it to bolster it.
Makes
also,
sense.
just a really nice model, lots of kind of cool effects and stuff. So if you're looking for a painting project on a slightly smaller scale, that would lend itself pretty well to that. There is a new battle tome. It has a brand new cover. Looks very cool, and that is cut across the Mortarch, who gets some tasty new rules in this battle tome as well. The current Bone Reapers battle tome launched with the last edition of Age of Sigmar, and this brings it into the brand new edition, along with lots of all the new rules that other battle tomes recently have got. So it kind of updates it across the board and makes them kind of compete really in the current edition.
Makes sense to me. Tell me about this vampire.
Okay, well, we'll jump to the vampire in a second. So this is Ivya Volga, and she is a outcast of her house. She is a wandering lone monster hunter, woodswoman. She wanders out into the wild places of the mortal realms. She finds monsters, she chops their heads off, and she drinks their blood. So the other vampires are
Why the heck is
sort of
Soulblight when they just got about? Did they
her,
really just get one?
Vampire. She's still part of the family when push comes to shove.
Maybe they're not getting a new one. Maybe they just
she can still join the fight.
showed a picture of the battle tome
because
because
which she uses to kind of swamp enemy units and monsters to help her kind of even the
because
odds in
they,
close combat. But,
because they were just showing off
what's
like
quite
the two
fun
different
about her, I
armies or
guess, is
something like that.
You've got this kind of crux of lots
I guess
of
they'll say
different
here in a
almost kind of
minute
fairy
whether
tale
they're actually
elements
getting
pulled
into it
together
or not.
into a
But
character.
that would
But
be kind of
it's a vampire,
silly
right?
if
So
they're
it's
like,
a
hey,
very
by the
dark
way, we're
Warhammer
putting out a
take
book
on a very kind of classic European
for
fairy
these
tale
ones
sort of
that
It's the
vibe.
vampires
already
leading
have a
into
book.
the woods. It makes sense. It's
Yeah.
an interesting and fascinating thematic element, and it seems like both of these characters are helping.
Yeah, that's the
drive
same.
those
That's the
armies deeper
same
into their bespoke and unique
battle tone. That's not a
aesthetics
new
and
one,
feels
right?
that they have.
That looks
Yeah,
like the
but
same
both of them
covers
give you a
before.
sort of direction, I guess. So she's obviously
What's
got
up,
blue
Hophead
elements
Ed? I don't
too,
know
so
what's
you
happening,
need
but
to
go
kind of
Garrett.
dive
Heck
into
yeah,
the
we're
vibe.
talking about some
Soul Black Gravelords
Warhammer up
again,
here, dude.
actually got one of the last battle tomes of the last edition, which meant that they didn't get lots of the cool things that lots of other armies got with the latest edition of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. This battle tome brings them bang up to date. It also incorporates
Okay,
other
so-
units we've seen added
so
in
apparently
since
the last
battle tome was added.
Battle tome
including
was
things
last
like
edition,
the,
so this is
the
bringing it to
vampire
9th
unit we
edition.
saw
That's
in the
crazy.
last edition, the last box set for Warcry. So it actually has quite a lot more to it than even the current Soul Black Gravelords book. So Soul Black Gravelords came out relatively recently. They were a huge hit. One of the
Yeah.
most popular armies.
If I was doing Age of Sigmar,
and
if I was
this book
going to
brings
have
them
like an
bang up to date
order,
with loads of cool
like a
stuff
good
that you
guy
can
army and a
do.
bad guy army,
Amazing.
I'd probably go like
But
the
We
that's
have
not
more Age of
that's not
Sigmar?
it. We've got even more. We've got even more.
I
What do you
feel
call
like
it?
no one would have predicted that this was going to be an Age of Sigmar.
Yeah, I mean, they've been spoiled, and here's
hang on.
something.
Let off with a line, and now it's all about
going on my
Well,
computer.
let's see what else we got.
Is it streaming still? Yes, I'm still streaming. Okay.
I don't remember taking the coin Malleus. But here we are,
I'd probably
trudging
go
through the mud to bring Sigmar's light.
go Seraphon and
to
then
the
like the
realms.
Soulblight Death Lords, like the freaking vampires. They're so cool. More dudes for you to paint. 100%, dude. Give me more dudes to paint. Is that a new army? The Free Cities?
So, Cities of Sigmar, that is the new infantry that is on its way for the Free Peoples, basically, Sigmar's mortal followers. So, just to set your expectations a little bit, we are still a good few months away from the release of this army in full, but we wanted to kind of keep you updated as to where the project was getting to.
So it's kind of like in the original
and now we've got the first
Warhammer
like, painted
Fantasy,
miniatures
it's
to show you.
was like the
This
Empire,
is,
basically.
some warriors from the mortal infantry units of Sigmar. They are effectively, if you imagine that these people have to face flying sharks and huge uruks and vampires and monsters and pretty much
there's
the human
or
equivalent of
Bretonia.
Cox Force, then.
yeah, well, not really. If you're
Kinda,
looking
sorta.
for the absolute underdog of the Mortal Realms, this is this unit. They are given a rusty shield.
Dude on the
not
right has a
matching
dope
weaponry,
name.
a hat that
Mike and
just about
Eddie, yeah.
fits, and
Eddie.
then kind of booted out en masse into the
good
realms on
one.
great big crusades, given a pat on the back, and they have to go and found a city somewhere in the Mortal Realms. So they are the plucky underdogs of the Mortal Realms.
It's good to actually see some interesting models that are basically the opposite end of the spectrum of that sort of often wild and crazy and monstrous element and aesthetic that you see a lot of
Even on
Sigmar.
the good guy side, right? Even in the Forces of Order, Stormcast have very much been the point of view characters almost that we've kind of followed. And what this army basically does is it gives you the base level. It gives you like, what do the humans look like? What are they up to in the Mortal Realms? We'll have lots more stuff for the Cities of Sigmar over the coming weeks and months. As
how
we
do
kind
you
of
even
approach the release.
like
This is a
justify
piece
that
of
in the
artwork
rules
from
though?
the
Like
upcoming
it's
battle
literally
tome. And what this
monsters and
does, which is quite
gods
cool,
fighting,
gives you a
and
sense
then
of
it's
some of
like,
the
hey, we're a bunch of
sub-factions that are
humans.
covered within
We
the
got
new
we got
battle tome.
swords. We figured out how to
such
make
a
some
different
swords, and we're gonna fight
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. So at the center
It's
there,
like,
you've got
all right,
Sigmar's
go
sigil,
home, kids.
the 12-pointed star. But
Unless
round the
it's
edges,
just
you've got some
unless the
symbols
plan,
of cities
basically,
that
it's
might
probably
be
just gonna be like a
familiar
horde
if you're
army. It's gonna be
up to
very
date
much
on your
like
current Age of
orcs
Sigmar
or
lore,
something like
and there's
that,
some
where
ones
it's just
that are
like you
brand
just have
new.
a crap
So
ton
give
of
you a bit
them.
of a sense of
You know, the point of it
different
isn't
corners of
necessarily
the
to be
Mortal
like,
Realms
oh,
that
one
the
like,
battle tome
big,
and
strong,
the armies
beefy
cover.
units.
Said
It's like,
Sigmar
oh,
and
you
Cities
have
of
like
Sigmar are still a little
30
ways off.
units
What
in
can it
one,
look like between now and
30 minis in like
So
one
in
unit
terms
or
of
something like
the
that.
roadmap for Warhammer Age of Sigmar, we have
Happens in Final
Blades of
Fantasy
Khorne
all the
and
time,
Headlands
dude.
to
You always
Slaanesh
defeat
are
gods in Final
available to pre-order
Fantasy.
just now,
Yeah,
they
but you're
are
never like
days
just a
away from being in
man.
people's
Like you start
hands.
out just human,
Very soon
but then
after,
you
we've got
find out
two
like,
death
oh, I
battle
have
tomes, so the
some
Ossiarch Bone Reapers
deep
and
down
the
mystical
Soul Black
powers or
Gravelords
something like
are hot
that.
on
It
their
helps
heels.
me do the
And then we
crazy
have
things I
Mystery
do.
Book 1,
Like, that's what I feel like
in
it always
summer. We're not going to
like.
tell you what that is just yet, but it's
My
it's gonna be very
main,
cool
I
and
mean, my
exciting,
main
so we'll, yeah,
game I've ever played of Final
tune in for
Fantasy
future
is
previews to find out what that is.
7.
We also have
But it's like, yeah, you find
Seraphon
out, oh,
alongside
okay, like you're
their,
infused with
army
Mako
box.
energy, so of
They're
course
gonna
you're
land
going to
in
be able to
summer,
do crazy
as
stuff.
will the latest General's Handbook. And then in autumn,
Yeah, exactly.
mystery book
Hazel
I'm
Beef.
not gonna tell you about today.
Like the Imperial Guard in 40k. Like,
I am the
I guess
worst.
that's exactly how it'll work. Is
And then Cities of
you'll
Sigmar
have,
will be with us before the end of the year. So
it'll
we'll
just
keep you
be
up to date.
like
We'll give you,
massive
lots more
100
information
unit
about
like
Cities of
army
Sigmar,
or whatever
whether
like
it's
that.
Seraphon,
100 mini army.
Cities of Sigmar or any of those other battle tomes that are on the way. It is a pretty exciting few months actually. For
I
Age
mean,
of
you've
Sigmar.
only told us up to autumn. Who knows what the winter
Who
will
knows?
bring?
Who knows what the winter could bring?
Well, what do we have? So we've covered a lot of Sigmar.
Done some
We took
Sigmar.
a detour from the 41st Millennium. I feel like we should go back there for
We
at
can
least
go
a
that
little
for a
bit.
little bit. Yeah, see
All
what
right,
we
what
got.
else do we have here?
What do they got for us?
Then, we've got to get out of here. The Hulk's going to blow! Not until we find our Iron King. Quick, search through the stasis chambers. Beastmen! Get to the escape pods. The ancestors are watching.
Beastmen always felt like a weird addition to 40k. Just thematically. I mean, I know they're part of like they're part of Xenos army, right? Aren't they Chaos or something like that? So it's not like they're their own army, but it still just feels weird because
I am a huge fan of Kill Team, and these are two amazing kill teams. And we're nearing the end of the story of Gallo Dark.
Yeah, so this is Gallo Fall.
Can we
which
battle,
gives
but
you
I
a
get
hint
to use
about
my
what
amiibos?
might be occurring in the
Hey,
narrative. This is the
as-
last.
you can use any
installment
proxy
of the current
mini you
season of
want.
Kill
You
Team,
can use
which is the
whatever you
Into the
want.
Dark season where we're inside spaceships.
You could
And the
totally
reason
do
it's
that.
The end of the season
Use
of
your
this
amiibos
is
as
that
little
the Gallo
proxies.
Dark, the space Hulk we've been fighting over for the past year, is crashing. It is crashing into a planet, and this last.
Seems an appropriate Warhammer 40,000 sort
absolutely,
of an outcome.
all the best.
It's
bits of
Mario
blow up. That's kind of how it
versus,
works. Welcome to Warhammer. And
my
this
Necron
Space
Overlord.
Hulk is crashing into a planet, and this last installment is basically the last 5 minutes of
Can
a
I
really
use a
cool
dog
action
from
film
Monopoly?
where your kill
Seriously,
teams have
dude,
to
you can do
get to
whatever
the
you
escape
want.
pods
You
and
can't
get
play in a
out of
tournament at
Dodge
the store with
before the
those.
spaceship
But if you ever want to
crashes
play
into a planet
Warhammer with
and is
me,
obliterated.
I gotta tell you,
you can use whatever the heck you want. I don't care. As long as you use like the rules from Warhammer. You can use any miniature
the minigun
piece you
Yeah,
have.
there's
I
a
don't
my
minigun,
last
care.
yeah,
rotary
yeah.
cannon, to be precise.
Yeah,
what
I
about
know.
yours? What's your
To be
favorite?
honest, like, yeah,
So-
if you were
so
gonna
my
go play in a
favourite thing
shop
the
or a
Leagues of
store, you
Votan
can't do
half
that.
is
But
that there's one of the characters who's
when you're playing with
basically
friends,
come with
like, heck,
knuckle
I don't
dusters
care
to a
what you
space fight.
use. Like,
So,
use whatever
they know
you
they're gonna
want.
board a spaceship,
As long as
they
it's not
don't know
like
what horrors could await them.
size-wise not
They
too
have
out of
access to the
control
full
compared
range
to like
of
what
the
they
Leagues of
should be.
Votan equipment, railguns, rifles.
I'm more of a
all
laid
sorts of
back
cool
player,
stuff,
though.
And this guy
More-
has decided he's going to
I'm
go with
not
the knuckle
so
dusters.
I mean, they're like laser
strict
They
and
are like
staunch
laser
on the
knuckle
rules and
dusters,
stuff like that.
Even so,
I mean, when in doubt, punch it, right?
yeah, absolutely. And up against them, we have the Felgor Ravagers. Which
I
are
love that
Beastmen
they
Warhammer.
brought
But let's take
back-
a look at some of these Leagues of
I mean,
Votan
back in the
a
day,
little
they were
bit more
called
detail.
squats.
So
I love how they brought back the
based on
squats.
the current plastic kit,
Space
for the kin,
Dwarves, you
which
know.
is already a really flexible.
They gave them a
kit,
new
loads of
name,
different
Leagues
head
of
options and
Votan,
weapon
but we
options.
all know what they are.
And
Like,
much like we've seen with
you
lots
can
of
try,
other kill
you can
teams,
try to
we
come
have
up with a
new
new name
sprue
with
that
that for
expands the
them.
set and effectively allows
Give them a
you
new
to
coat of
make
paint,
your
but they're still
models
squats.
into,
They're still Space
specialists within
Dwarves, you
Kill
know.
Team. I think it's one of the better upgrade kits because it adds onto a very recent kit, and the kit was already pretty good, right?
Yeah.
The Leagues of Votan kit was a flexible kit.
And of course, you get everything you need in the launch box for it, so it's not as if you're missing one of the components.
I like their
when you
orange
purchase it.
color. Like that's
But it
what I
really is
see them
robust
painted
in
as
terms of what it
mostly, is like
adds.
in that
Of course,
orange.
You've got those
Just-
space laser knuckle dusters, which I'm affectionate.
It's probably got a better name than that. But
Yeah,
it's,
I mean, I'm not a lore writer here. We get that. And do we have the rest of the pictures there as well? Yeah, there's that. There's the minigun. That's the one I want. Plus, what better inside of a spaceship than sort of a jump pack, right?
Yeah, you got a jump pack too, which is pretty cool. I like the Ironkin.
I thought you totally said that like
who's got a kind of data
sarcastically,
pad
because
there,
it
which is
doesn't
guiding
make
them through
any
the ship.
sense.
And a
But
reminder that the Ironkin are no different.
he's not
going
gonna
to
say that because he works for Games Workshop and he'll get
They are
fired.
equal opportunities employer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Up against them, we have the Felgor Ravagers. So this is a really exciting kit. We haven't really seen Beastmen in Warhammer 40,000 properly for a long time. We saw a few of them pop up in Blackstone Fortress, but they were definitely like the side thing rather than the main event.
I mean, these are Emperor worshipping beastmen, right?
I don't think so, though. There's a lot of chaos spikes on these guys. This is a brand new kit. It's very flexible, so much
it
like
just feels
lots of the
so
other
weird
Kill
to see
Team
Beastmen
kits
in,
we've seen, the
in
bespoke Kill Team
40k.
kits,
Like
you
that's
can build them in
I couldn't
loads of
remember where I
different
saw them
ways,
before.
different
Yeah,
options
so it was
for
in
weapons,
Blackstone
different
Fortress,
heads,
which is like a little
and
box game.
interchangeability between
So
them.
like if you
Each
want
one
more
is a
like
specialist,
bite-sized
so
experience with
it's very
with
definitely
Warhammer, and you're like, I don't
combat
want to buy
focused Kill
100
Team, but you've
minis,
got
but I
some
want to
stealthy ones. You've got some
play
magic ones.
Warhammer.
You've got some with
a Warhammer
extra
type of
equipment
game.
like
They
smoke
have
grenades
box
and gas
games that you
grenades.
can,
You've got some with bionic bits.
you know,
some that
they
like
just come with like a
charging and
couple
ramming
minis.
stuff.
It's no different
So
than
if you're looking
buying
for an
like
aggressive kill team, it gives you some options.
I don't know,
and much like lots
a
of the other
little
recent kill teams,
strategy
like
game
recruiting the
from
Eldar, the
Target or
level of
whatever, or
detail
Walmart. You know,
on
like
those
they're
kits
kind of
is
fun little
really, really
bite-size
lovely.
Yeah, the detail
entry
extends to
points.
the terrain
It's
as well.
more
If you
substantial
go
than
to
like
the
your
last
normal
expansions to
Target.
the
Oh,
set,
that's not
you
true.
have a bunch of coward
There
pods
is
that
a
you can jump
Warhammer
into.
game
You
at
have
Target I was looking at the other
facing
day.
you.
I think it's
Kind
called
of an
Space Marine.
amazing set to
But
finish
anyways,
off that sort of
that's not the point.
well-rounded
The point is
collection
like
of
they're a
video
great
You've got a
entry
medical
point.
bay, which is quite cool. There's some stasis pods.
Again, another form of coward
Like the
pod. I
Blackstone
get it.
Fortress
This is a
and
sort of
stuff like
theme that's
that.
going
Like they're
on here,
nice
but
little
Beastmen kind of have that vibe to them on occasion.
I think what I really
Warhammer
like about it is
Underworlds,
it's got a
Warhammer
feel of,
Quest,
it's
stuff
got a
like
feel of like
that.
a really old school Warhammer set because you
I think
basically
Blackstone
got dwarves
Fortress is
fighting beastmen,
discontinued,
right?
unfortunately,
they've
but you
put
can
them
still
in
get it
space in a
online different
spaceship,
places.
and they've all got like laser guns and chainsaws and stuff.
And
It
laser
just
knuckle dusters.
and laser knuckle dusters. So it just feels really, really Warhammer at the same time as being completely science fiction.
And
It's
once again,
really fun.
this whole Hulk that you've been fighting over for all these months is crashing.
It is crashing, yeah. So the climactic final installment to the current season of Kill Team, two very, very fun Kill Teams to expand it.
I have a Kill Team box. I
Just
have
a really
not
fun
even,
box.
again,
I was
not
gonna
even
say,
opened
so
yet. I have a
not to, like, give another shout
just
out
like
to
the
Adepticon,
Dominion
but
box I was
right
talking
over
about
there in the
earlier.
other
I
room,
also
we
have
literally, what, like a 100+ player event of nothing but
Octarius, is that what it's called? Whatever, when they
came
came out with a new edition of Kill
A
Team.
lot of excitement around
Never
the
even,
end of the season of Into the
I've only
Dark
opened
Horizons.
it
Still
to take the
kinda
terrain
alive and
out.
kicking
I painted up some of the
playing it
terrain and stuff
all
to
over the
use
world
in
right now.
regular
And Into the Dark
40k.
as a way to play won't go away.
But
That's like your
I'm excited to
inside
paint those guys up,
um,
honestly,
Kill
because it's like the
Team, so
Death Krieg
gives
of
a very different
Core.
feel from playing Kill Team when
That
you
was
have
called Death
ruins and
Krieg.
things. It's a very
Death Core of
claustrophobic,
Krieg.
close quarters thing. And both of those Kill Teams actually, Leagues of
and,
Votann, very durable, lots of very
Yeah,
dangerous
I love
short-range
their
weaponry, and the Beastmen team.
uniforms. Like it's
um,
very just like
very
World
good
War
close
II
combat.
esque.
You'd imagine, I haven't,
Or
I
not
haven't
even like
seen the
World
stats in
War
huge detail,
One,
but
like
Beastmen
World War
are
One, World War
notoriously
II,
hard to
like
kill.
Let's not forget that in Kill
German,
Team, all these teams are considered to be
kind of
elites.
like
It's elites in a
kind of
sense,
garb.
right?
It's
These
kind
are
of
not
really
your
intense
run-of-the-mill
skulls
dregs.
all
These
over
are
it, and like
sort of
crazy
the
looking
best of the
gas
best
mask and
in
everything.
especially difficult
best of
special
claws.
operations kind of the best course. Bravo, well done, Eddie. Excellent joke. I love it. Anyway, what do we have next? Well, we've gone from above the world and crashing into it to under the world.
Warhammer Underworlds.
So you see, this is one of those box sets that I was talking about. This was for Age of Sigmar instead of for 40k. Age of Sigmar also has box sets, so Underworlds is one of them. It's a fun little bite-sized Warhammer game. So it's like, I don't want to play on a huge battlefield.
I'm
Just give me a
super
little
excited.
board
It's a
game I can
bunch
play
of-
with
it's
friends.
a bunch of Siege models that looks like they
Looks really cool, actually.
took the full brunt of what happens when you really followed Siege as far as it can go. Tell us about this, Eddie.
So this is a brand new season of Warhammer Underworlds, and it brings with it a new Stormcast warband, which are a magic warband, and
Levitating rocks and all.
on the other side is a Tzeentchian warband, which has a disciple of one of the Gaunt Summoners of Tzeentch, the most powerful sorcerer, so somebody who's been tutored by one of Tzeentch's main,
disciple, or
followers,
whatever they
basically.
call their.
And a
Sick.
gaggle of basically bits of wild.
It reminds me of
magic
the
that they've
thing
thrown
from
together.
Pan's
So
Labyrinth,
if you thought
like with
horrors
no
were
eyes.
wild and
No,
unruly,
puts its
these
hands
kind of
up.
take it to the next
The eyes
stage.
are in
So
his
it's
hands.
weird hollow. It is a magic-themed season for Warhammer Underworlds, and two really, really nice-looking warbands. This being a new season, it is a really good place to jump into Warhammer Underworlds if you've not played it before. It comes with all the things you need to play. So you've got a board, you get all the dice you need, you get 4 decks, so you get a deck for each of the warbands. You also get 2 more Rivals decks.
The Rivals decks. So
Yeah.
right out of the batch, they've got a sort of evergreen format decks as well that are baked into the box.
Yeah, so those decks work with any of your existing warbands from any season of Warhammer Underworlds you've ever had, and also work particularly well with the 2 warbands that come in this box.
Eddie.
I think
Eddie's
stars
on
of
it in the
this box, I think,
Discord.
are the miniatures as ever.
Putting up
Warhammer
the
Underworlds has,
picture of
like,
the creature
a
from Pan's
reputation, I suppose, for
Labyrinth.
having some of the best, most iconic miniatures in Warhammer.
That's
and this is
exactly
kind of
it.
no
That's
exception.
exactly what it looks
So
like.
you have a look at a bit more detail.
Let's see if it zooms in on it. Yeah,
units. So
see?
we'll start off with Philim's
Just with more
Pandemonium.
arms.
So
They have
you've got
3
your
arms and-
sorcerer
or 4
in the
arms.
center there, and they have summoned effectively
I
elements
got a free
of
night, so I'm
Tzeentch,
playing Switch and Chill.
wild
Nice.
magic manifested into the form of leaping lesser demons. So it's all about basically
That one thing
your
on the right
sorcerer
with like
is
where its
summoning stuff.
mouth
That's
goes
pretty
from
much
its
linchpin of
the
warband,
back of its head all the way down
the
like
unit is just
underneath
full
its
of
belly. It's like
right?
so
So
creepy.
This is a
It's
really
all teeth.
wild, unusual
Its
warband.
mouth
not
is
only
going
in
the
terms of how it looks,
wrong
but also
way.
how it plays.
It's a really well-named warband as well, and it's hard for me to believe that something this weird could be as adorable
Ephelim's
as the sea
Pandemonium.
creatures we've seen in previous editions as well.
Like the one with the
But
beak,
this is one of
yeah,
those
that's
bands where I
pretty
saw it and
sick.
immediately had to have it on the miniatures
He's like
alone,
casting a spell
much
with
less
his
the cool
feet.
rules that we get in the newest edition.
That's all he has
I
his
really
feet. Like
like
he's using
the
his hands as
central
his feet
character,
and his
a
feet
Philim,
as his
the
hands. He's
sorcerer.
like casting a spell
The
with
Gaunt
his feet.
Summoners, I think, are really,
So
really nice
crazy.
miniatures, and this has got all the kind of hallmarks of that. It's slightly differently presented. I think Tzeentch just gives you an opportunity as a painter to just do some really wild stuff. And I think in terms
Yeah,
of
I like the color schemes.
left field out there warband,
Like a lot of the
just
other
miniatures
Chaos
generally
armies
don't
are very
come
much
more
like
wild than this.
the
Very
Khorne
accessible
armies
to
are
a
like
lot of
red
wargamers, a
and
lot of
blood
interesting
and gore.
robes, but also a lot of
Nurgle
They
is just
contrast up very
green
nicely.
and
They do.
Yeah, they contrast
grotesque and like
on the
gory.
other side of the box, we have
And then, like, Tzeentch, I
Domitan
love-
Storm
there's a
Coven,
third
so
one.
This is a magic
What's the third one?
Storm host.
Oh,
Stormcast unit.
what's his
They
name?
are equipped in Thunderstrike armor, so they
I
fit
can't think
in
of it.
alongside
It's
the recent releases we had.
it's
Alongside
it's
things like
basically
Dominion.
the god of
It's
just
just really, really nice Stormcast models. So each one is
pleasure, but
a
like
great
to the
character model in their
extreme,
own right.
like to where it's
Some
painful.
Really nice stuff going on with the
Kind
bases.
of messed up.
Really nice
But
poses
Tzeentch I
and
love because it's
proportions.
just
Again,
like
if you're looking for a painting
Slaanesh. Yeah,
project,
there you go, Hazel Beef.
Warhammer Underworlds
Slaanesh
has
is
outdone itself once more with
way too weird for me. But Tzeentch is super sick. Like such fun color schemes. Such like I feel like their models are like
it's fascinating to see, and also
yeah, just a lot more thought out. Like it's not just like, oh,
absolutely.
let's just make it as gory as
talked about
possible
before,
and make it
it
as
comes with lots of different decks you can use. So
spiky
you've
as
got
possible, or
the
make it,
Rivals decks
add as
for,
many boobs
each
as
of
we
the
possibly
warbands.
can.
We've got two
It's
other
like,
Rivals
oh
decks
no,
you
like
can
they
use
really
with each
put
of the
thought
warband
into making
or with
these like
any
look
other
fun and
warband in
interesting and
Warhammer
colorful
Underworlds.
and
The box set
zany
itself
and
is a really
stuff.
flexible gaming box that you can.
The God of Excess, that's what
play
it is.
On its own. You can
Slaanesh,
incorporate
the
it
God
into
of
other
Excess.
warbands you've got, into other seasons.
In
you can
general,
use it as the core of a brand new hobby.
I feel like it's generally
good to see that more
represented
people
though
are
as
also
like
taking advantage of it and
yeah, like
recognizing
they're
the
all like
beautiful
half
what
naked
Underworlds
and
and
like
Rivals has really brought to
yeah.
the fore. That it is,
Whatever,
no matter
like, it's
how
a
you
very
approach
weird,
one of those things, it
kinky
has
army
infinite
Slaanesh.
flexibility, whether it's just for a regular game on occasion with your local game group, or whether it's building into that scene to go to things like the World Championships and everything in between.
So Rivals, for those of you that don't know, Rivals for Underworlds is effectively pre-made decks. You can choose from either the deck that comes with your warband or from a selection of other generic decks, and it makes it very accessible because it means that you don't need to have bought loads and loads of different expansions for Warhammer Underworlds to kind of pick the best card from each. You just go, I just need that deck. And it might come in one box alongside your warband, or you could just pick up a box like this, which comes with lots of different options, and all of a sudden, all of your warbands.
Noise Marines are cool though.
A variety of
now,
different decks to pick. So it's a
Fast-paced
really
Warhammer at the edge of your fingertips anytime.
really
or,
nice box.
Or collect deep if you want to go for that
this up real
Grand
quick.
Clash and sort of World Championships grade of Warhammer.
Okay, yeah. But who are they? What army are they with?
What do we have next?
Are they just like the
I think
generic
we're finished.
Chaos Space
Yeah, we're
Marines? Is
done.
that it?
Finished.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's what we're done.
Oh, well,
I always
glad everyone
forget
got
they're-
up at 3 a.m. UK time to.
Let's see.
see
Yeah,
this
they're just
amazing
part of
preview.
like
We
the
got to see
chaos.
the Lion.
Which
That's
yeah,
cool.
that
We got to
that
see
that is cool.
Underworlds. We got
The
to see
freaking
a whole bunch of stuff. for
flamer
Sigmar.
guitar. That's so cool.
Uh,
Good times.
I'm pretty tired here. We did a live preview at Adepticon, an amazing
See, the
show.
Chaos Kool-Aid is super
I
good.
think we've got nothing left to cover, right?
Oh, they're Emperor's
There's
Children.
one
Okay.
thing.
Are we actually going to do
We're
that?
gonna
All
do
right,
it.
here we
We're gonna
go.
do
No.
Here we go. Come on.
Don't be that guy. Come on.
You
it's
talking
Seraphon.
10th
Go
edition?
ahead.
Or are we just getting a new Space Hulk? That was someone else's like, watch it just be like a new Space Hulk game. It's not even like a new edition. This is, which, that's fine. That'd be cool.
Victory. That is what the preachers cry from the spires of their temples. What commanders tell the soldiers in their service. The Indomitus Crusade meets with triumph after triumph. Day by day we tear Imperium Nihilus from the despoiler's grip. And though we are beset on all sides, With each battle, we drive back
Here comes the
mutant,
Tyranids! Look at him
the
go!
heretic, the alien.
Heck yeah.
As I
I have
speak
that
these
many.
words, our forces engage the remnants of Leviathan.
That's sick.
Reclaiming lost worlds, atoning for old shames. A crusade to cleanse the stars. Taking the fight to the enemy. We routed the Tyranids at Baal. We broke their high fleet. Soon, their
Games Workshop
foulness will be but a memory.
does a killer job with these units.
That is what the preachers say. Belief will not save us. Lies will not protect us. But it is our hope that will damn us.
Oh, that's sick. Here we go. Big hammer boy.
In the spies and the slums.
Jeez, he's ripped the Space Hulk in half like it was a sheet of paper.
Our people sing of victory. Victory as the galaxy burns. Victory as the Imperium rots around us. Victory as humanity rages against the dying of the light. Victory.
But they didn't tell us anything.
A new edition of Warhammer 40,000. Who
Uh,
knew? Who knew?
Nobody called that, actually. It
Nobody had
was
any idea.
so good. I gotta tell you, growing
That's
up
pretty
my
sick.
whole life as a fan, there's something about the grim, dark 41st millennium that when you watched, and it was beautiful and it was stunning, but when you watched Adeptus Sororitas and the Ultramarines crushing some Necrons, there was a little bit of hope. There's a little bit of a
That's
glimmer.
all gone. That's all
Oh
gone.
yeah, that was the grim, dark 41st millennium to a T, and
That was not a happy video.
it's not the first time
Like,
I've seen
every-
it tonight, and I am still excited at how
That's
not
sick
happy
video.
it was, actually.
But I think it just gives you like a sense
They
of the
told you
absolute
victory.
horrificness of not just like facing Tyranids, which is pretty horrific on the scale of things,
It's
but
not
just
nice.
generally, Warhammer 40,000 is an absolutely awful place to be alive, even for a Space Marine. Their like survivability against certain.
So I went to the
races is
website you
measured
said to go to,
It is
and it's
awful.
still
Minutes
down.
and
It says new
hours.
It's
website coming
terrible,
March
but it is a wonderful
23rd.
place to
So
have a hobby. And why don't we
won't
let
know
the people
more
who
about it
actually
till
run
tomorrow,
tell
but
us a little
that's
bit
all
more
right.
about that.
Absolutely.
And we'll tell you a lot, but first.
Warhammer 40,000 is the world's most popular tabletop miniatures game.
Yeah, Jake, that's what I was mentioning at the beginning of the stream before you came in, was like my prediction. I was like, they got to do a new edition, and they got to update Tyranids. Some of the Tyranid minis are still from like the 90s.
Destructive war machines,
which is wild. Like, they're using some of the same minis for like
Well, mantra with this new edition has been streamlining.
We've been listening to the community, and that's a large part of why we've decided to focus the game as much as possible.
How can we keep the tactical depth and richness that players love, but examine every rule in the game? Does this need to be here, or is there another way that we can achieve the same result?
To secure victory, you must understand your strengths and the strengths of your enemy.
We've fundamentally changed the datasheets from the ground up,
making them much more accessible and really focusing the rules onto the datasheet themselves. What the team's been able to do with this is really look at every unit in the game, make sure it has a really clear battlefield role and a thing for it to do, and then write the right rules for it.
Your datasheet rules all fit on a single card, and your army rules will fit on a single page.
One of the things we wanted to ensure was that everyone got to play 40k as soon as possible after the edition was launched. So to make that happen, all of the rules for everyone's armies via the datasheets and their army rules will be available for free.
From the darkness between the stars.
Did they just say the rules are for free?
Of evolution spawns fresh
no
horrors.
way! That's exactly what I was talking about earlier, Shadow. They gotta give the rules away for free. Holy crap!
This is the largest Tyranid swarm ever
no
freaking
way. I called it. I was like, they have to do this. Like, if they're not doing this. Oh man, they finally figured it out, Games Workshop. They finally did the thing.
It's a game that players of Warhammer 40,000 will love.
I'll pay all you want for the minis. I don't care. Charge as much as you want. Just give me the rules for free.
While still keeping all the flavor that you've come to love in Warhammer 40,000.
For players who've been with Warhammer 40,000 for the last 35 years, they've never seen anything like this before. We've never shown conflict at this scale.
That's huge.
Immersive and thrilling new gameplay. Discover a major new narrative in the fourth.
I don't have to pay $50 a book now.
The new edition of Warhammer 40,000 deploys this summer.
I have 6 books back there on my bookshelf that are $50 a piece that I've had to buy over the years. That sucks. I'm so happy they're going free. So holy crap.
The Warhammer 40,000 studio,
I mean, that's a 6 there. I've had more books in the past. These are just the ones I currently have, like, for this edition, basically. Between Age of Sigmar and
it's fascinating
9th edition.
There's a whole bunch to unpack about the new edition, not least of which is what's going on with the lore of the 41st millennium, as well as what's happening with the rules. What does a streamlined experience actually mean? Is it still the 40k we've come to know and love? As well as what do free
simplified rules is nice. Yeah, I haven't liked the simplified data sheets.
There's lots of lines there thrown away which have quite big implications.
I was playing with Jake the other night, and like I have a PDF with my army, and it's like, oh, my army list is like, it's like 15, 20 pages or whatever of just stats and abilities, and it's like so hard to maneuver through. I'm sure, Shadow, they're still going to have books. Like, Games Workshop loves money too much. They're going to sell books for sure.
So, Terminators are back.
But
these are the first company of the Space Marines.
I would be shocked if they stopped selling books.
Has Terminators.
But it'll just be more of like if you want more lore and fluff and art and stuff like that.
Are absolutely what Terminators always were in your mind. These are indomitable, walking powerhouses of destruction. Juggernauts of hate and fury unleashed upon the enemies of mankind.
And really brought up to speed with the development of the miniature range as a whole in the new edition, as well as the way that the miniatures themselves have been scaled over time. And I'm especially excited because as I was watching the chat during some of the videos earlier, I saw a bunch of people saying, oh, I thought we were going to see new Terminator miniatures. And, well, you were going to see new Terminator miniatures, and they are stunning. They do all of the justice to the original sculpts. They do all of the justice to the aesthetic and the feel.
I'm going to be honest, it looks a lot like...
brought up to the scale that they're really justifying.
It looks like the old ones. I guess I've never looked at the old ones enough.
They're taller than Primaris Marine. One of the things worth saying about
to know the difference, but looking at these, I'm like, oh, that looks like the old ones, but apparently they're new, so they look sick.
Any Space Marine can earn the right to wear a suit of Terminator armor if they prove themselves to get promoted to the first company, if they prove themselves to be worthy of the mantle of wearing Terminator armor. So these could be worn by veterans of the Firstborn veterans.
The proportions look better. Yeah, I guess I can.
They could also be worn by Primaris veterans of the Indomitus Crusade or any other type of Space Marine veteran.
And this is deeply true in the lore for the models. This is canonical. This is the way that they were intended. And we're not being cheeky when we say that we've actually handled both the long-running demand for new Firstborn miniatures and for Primaris Terminators. Because they are, when all is said and done, Terminators. And there could be anyone inside those.
The Terminator suits themselves are relics, right? So these are thousands of years old, and even Belisarius Cawl, after 10,000 years of fiddling around with all the tech he had, couldn't improve on the Terminator suit.
Yeah, you're right. It is more.
Terminatus with those shards of the Emperor.
It makes a lot more sense anatomically. It looks like a person's actually in that suit. Looking at the old ones, is like they're so short and squatty.
They are recognizable.
It's really awkward. Yeah, no, they look a lot better. 100%.
The proportions and the pose are so much cooler.
And yeah, the detail, like they just said, the details are sick.
And obviously, the Terminators come with all sorts of cool kit. The Power Fist and Stormbolter are standard. The unit also obviously comes with an assault cannon. We saw one of those earlier as well. So it's just great to see such an iconic unit back in Warhammer 40,000.
I can't wait to see more of them, but I feel like we need to see the other side of the spectrum as well. But first, I think it's good to highlight the
give us some Tyranids. I want to see the Tyranid army.
The Terminators of old and the Terminators of today. And you can kind of see in this how their bulk and their size has not rendered the old Terminators to be tiny necessarily, but really fits much more prominently within the range.
Oh, that's an old Tyranid on the right there. Okay.
Faction to kind of perfectly land in that new wave of miniatures we've seen over the last.
So they're comparing it to the Primaris and then the old Terminators.
The more recent Chaos Terminators, some of the kind of the bigger character models. So your something like a Primarch, maybe like, Rubik Gulliman or the Lion or something like that, leading a squad of these guys. And obviously every chapter, all the main chapters we know about, have their own particular special brand of Terminator. So the Death Watch, the Archangels, the First Company veterans of the Ultramarines that have their particular beef against the Tyranids.
They do have quite a beef.
They've got some serious beef. But so every chapter's Terminators are cool, and these models allow you to be as cool as Terminators always should have been.
I couldn't agree more. And speaking of the beef that they have for Tyranids, we've shown you a new Space Marine miniature.
Seems
but
only fair, doesn't it? Seems only fair.
The other side of the coin.
Come on. Dude, that thing looked ripped. Like the muscles on that thing looked insane.
So,
new Termagants.
So Termagants are the most numerous forces of the Hive Mind. They spawn them out in their millions, in their billions across the planets they're seeking to consume. And the new Termagants are a glow-up, basically, of the Termagants we've seen
It's also the first model I ever painted.
Is it really?
Eddie, a little-known fact is that a Termagant was the first model I ever painted, and now I can't wait to paint millions more of them. New wave.
So here we are, a closer look at them, and you can see that the level of detail on these is so crisp and so lovely.
I'm not going to lie.
These are very much the vanguard of a new wave of Tyranids.
Still pretty similar to the original. Although, again, I hope they show a side-by-side, because I say that, but then when they show the original, it's like, oh no, it's
the most significant update to the Tyranid army we've ever done as a company.
I'm excited.
It just looked more jacked. Like the old ones are very like just smooth and
Tyranid range feel
and not very like just the poses. I think there's only like what 2 poses with the old style. Like even if they just add more poses, like with the head tilt and like the gun position, stuff like that, like that makes a huge difference. It doesn't have to be a drastic change. Just add some variation.
Alien of races to the galaxy, almost unknowable. And there's some definite sort of evolution of the range into exploring that sort of very foreign, very alien, very truly unknowable element of the Tyranid with the new range. And I'm so excited to see the reactions of folk when we share even more of the new plastic range of Tyranids.
That's all they're going to show?
Actually, might give you a sense of like which new miniatures might be on the way for Tyranids. Check out the cinematic. There are some returning favorites, it's fair to say.
Oh, so whatever we saw in the cinematic, those are
limelight for a bit and are well deserving of a new plastic kit.
Okay, yeah. See, so they're showing the old one on the left.
There's some things that we've never seen before. So
significantly different.
Hallmarks of the Tyranids.
It's funny. It's kind of like a game that you absolutely love and adore. It's really old, and you picture it one way in your mind. And then you finally go back and like play it again. You're like, oh, it doesn't look as good as I remember. That's like what I've been doing tonight with like Terminators and the Tyranids. It's like
it hasn't been outscaled in the development of it. It's still
the clip does look a bit goofy, but it also doesn't.
Just with that really fresh glow up, with that really.
I think it's the level of detail that really changes.
But I mean, Tyranids are kind of goofy in general. Like that's all organic material. Like even their guns are technically part of them. Like it comes from them. Like they don't even need the clip. If you look, there's hoses that go into their arm. Like literally, what they shoot comes from their bodies. So it's like it's all kind of goofy and weird. But yeah.
And you can see now that like contrast on that miniature, or like a wash or a dry brush or something like that, is going to pick out all that detail really nicely. So even though it's really, really detailed, you could certainly paint those very quickly if you wanted to.
Absolutely. And besides just the miniatures, there's a whole lot going on in the 41st millennium, isn't there, with the arrival of this new Tyranid range? What does that bode for us in terms of when we talk about the actual development of the universe itself, Eddie?
Yeah, so the new edition of Warhammer 40,000 is the new Tyrannic War. It's the fourth Tyrannic War against the Tyranids. So what we saw at the end of the Arcs of Omen with the Return of the Lion was the end of that story. So it has a really solid, conclusive narrative that kind of has a big culmination, a big showdown between the forces of the Angels of Death and the forces of Chaos. And then what we've done with the new edition is we've picked up the lens of what's going on in the galaxy. We've moved it to another part. In this instant, it's the western rim of the galaxy. So if
Western rim.
If you're familiar with your,
typically come from.
They do. They come from the east. Usually, they come from the east. So if you're familiar with your Warhammer 40,000 lore, you'll know that generally speaking, the Tyranid invasions have all come from the galactic east, and they've kind of picked off McCabe and the Tower Homeworld.
It was always told as the beginning of this tendrils, with the High Fleet in theory behind it.
Yes. So what we've got now with the fourth Tyrannic War is the forces of the Leviathan. The Imperium has been fighting them for quite a long time, and they thought they kind of got their measure, right? They fought them at Baal.
Broke their fleets at Baal.
Yeah, they thought they might have, like, seen the peak of Leviathan halted, and that's absolutely not true. What we're seeing now is from the other side of the galaxy, this enormous, great tendril, this sweeping mass of Tyranids, the largest invasion we've seen yet, swooping in from the other side.
And it's still part of Leviathan.
Yeah, so Leviathan is kind of crushing both sides of the galaxy. The galaxy is literally in the jaws of High Fleet Leviathan.
To me,
that's
giving
intense.
Like a sense of the absolute scale and cosmic horror of the Tyranids, which everybody knew was huge, but this is like, we thought it was just coming from one direction, and actually the galaxy is completely surrounded. There are Tyranids coming from all sides.
It's a huge and stunning change for me in terms of reflecting sort of the scope, scale, alien nature, and sort of almost the
so what happens after 10th edition? Is the game just over? Like, there's no way they win against the Tyranids if that's the case. Like, Tyranids are inevitable,
So just another apocalypse to add.
It's like I feel like they're cornering themselves big time. Like in the next 10 years is like Warhammer just go like, well, sorry, we just got to start over.
Eddie, it's one of those things we're not sure.
Ooh, okay.
We wonder how much will we talk about the reveal right up with the cinematic, but we'll do that. We'll talk a little bit about what does new 40K bring from an actual playing of the game perspective. First one is, we mentioned that the game has been streamlined, it's been simplified.
The Emperor comes back and defeats everyone. Yeah, I mean that's they could just do that. It seems like cheating, but yeah, the Emperor comes back and just destroys everyone, and then they just start from scratch. Like basically, it's like it's peace for like a short amount of time, and then they come out with Warhammer 41K. It's like this the next 1,000 years later, they're back in epic battle again.
Less complicated. And to streamline everything into sort of, we'll talk about it a little bit as we go through a couple of these next elements of the game. A good example is, instead of having, let me think of it, if you were to run a Space Marine detachment today, Space Marines army, you might have a book that has several pages of stratagems, you have several pages of psychic powers, you have warlord traits, you have relics, you have all these rules and layers of rules. And then if you want them to be,
quite a lot to learn,
it's
right?
a lot. And if you want to make them
table.
Ultramarines and add that on top, then you've got more pages of rules and stratagems and so on and so forth. What we didn't want to do is get rid of the value of things like stratagems and enhancements to your warlord or to some of your key character units. But they've been simplified down so that when you're playing, you'll have one full page spread open. And on that one full page spread, you'll have a series of stratagems, about 6 on average per army, as well as a series of upgrades to your warlord or to your relics, and a sub-faction rule, effectively, to whatever your army may be. And if you choose to play a different grouping, let's say you go from Ultramarines to Ultramarines First Company, instead of adding a whole other book to the whole experience, you'll take that one-page spread of rules and replace it with a different one, so that you're always working with a really tight, streamlined set of rules, but still the same depth that you have today within your army.
That'd be really nice, just to simplify things.
And then
I don't want to be flipping through 15 pages
taken and put back onto the data sheet
to play a game. Give me like one solid page, dense page with everything, so I can just glance down and be like, yep, that's what I need.
There's a greater emphasis for many of those rules moving into the data sheets, and moving into the overall game experience. We also have key changes to phases. They've been streamlined. We have the morale phase has been moved into the command phase and rejiggered entirely.
There we go.
Battle Shock, which we may talk about a little bit more here. The psychic phase has been broken down into the actual data sheets of the rules and abilities.
So it's not a psychic phase
there
anymore.
There isn't an actual psychic phase
change
anymore in the game. Instead, psychic abilities are baked into the units themselves. They still work in some ways evocative of how psychic powers work today, but it's not an entire phase that applies in very different ways to different armies.
So, for example, a librarian might have Smite, which would be a range shooting attack with a psychic ability.
Yes, with reflections of things like the hazard.
That makes way more sense. Just let them shoot during like the shooting phase or whatever, like
mortal wounds and other things, but still focused as basically a shooting attack. Whereas, some of the psychic powers that might buff a unit or debuff a unit are more baked into an ability within the data sheet as opposed to, an entire phase oriented around the functionality, and it better reflects the sort of strengths and weaknesses of different psychers. Someone like a Primaris psyker within the Astral Militarum might not be as reliable getting off their abilities as Magnus the Red, who's probably not going to fail them in your typical
so Magnus the Red has a ranged psychic attack, but it's like a really good ranged psychic attack.
Absolutely, and
as well as a range of other psychic
abilities as well, as opposed to just a generic psychic ability that every other psyker has.
Yeah, you mentioned a little bit about morale and battle shock there. I think obviously we'll dive into all of these rules in a lot more detail on the Warhammer community site over the coming weeks and months. But I think one of the things that I really like about the new edition, the changes, is that you don't lose models in morale anymore. You don't have you don't fail a morale tech and actually just take units off. It just changes the way that unit interacts with the game.
It does. It works much more like a unit
nice.
that's been broken up and banged up within a very fast-paced, sort of almost modern firefight, and that those units might not interact as well with rules and with grabbing objectives and other things as they normally would. Additionally, it has much more relevance throughout the game, whereas today you might, kill off most of the models in a unit. They barely pass the morale test. A couple models survive, and they go hide in a corner on an objective all game, and they're basically fine from then on out, even though most of their units have been devastated. Battle Shock will have less of an impact on models disappearing from the board and more of an impact on testing their mettle.
How reliable is that unit now in the battlefield, basically?
And once a unit has been damaged to a certain degree, it may become less reliable on a regular basis each turn, depending upon how
that's
they
really
hold
nice.
Themselves together in the face of the ongoing.
Not to just lose your entire unit.
Should we talk about stratagems a little bit?
There's definitely fewer stratagems to remember. There's many more stratagems that are core stratagems that you'll commonly see in gameplay. Whereas whenever you play a faction, you basically always have.
I like the fewer stratagems too, because right now, like me and my brother play, it's like I never use stratagems because it's like I don't know them. There's too many of them. Like I can't remember. I have no idea. So to have fewer that just work better.
So you have a very common, a list of common stratagems that everyone can use, and that's a little bit bigger than it is now. And then you have a much smaller list of ones that are specific to the faction.
Yep, and they're much more focused on really impactful stratagems you want to use on a regular basis. There's also fewer command points in the game by a significant margin, so there's much more of a focus on using the right stratagem at the right time, rather than dumping all of your command points on turn one into a series of combos that makes it feel like you're playing against, again, the front of the book as opposed to the armies and the data sheets that are on the tabletop. Also, let's be very clear. We've re-indexed the game. All of the index rules are free and are free on day one, as are all of the core rules to play the game.
So that means on the first day of the new edition, if I've got an orc army, which I do, I can get my core rules, I can get all my data sheets for my orcs, and I can play a game with that army on the first day.
And all your army rules as well. Now, there's nothing in particular that's hidden. All of them are free and available on day one to play with, and the points are going digital and free as well on day one.
So fantastic.
Nice.
So there's also the ability to purchase indexes, because if you want to have them, you can have actual physical data sheet cards.
So those are a little bit like the War Scroll cards in Warhammer Age of Sigmar.
Like Age of Sigmar.
All of the rules are kind of compact.
I like that. Yeah, that's one thing with Age of Sigmar is cool. When I got the Dominion box, it has like little War Scroll cards, and it's like
180 you have in Space Marine, or however many it is these
super
days.
Nice.
You only need to bring those data sheets with you instead of lugging the whole book, because again, you just have that one open page or a couple of data cards of your actual army rules and stratagems, and then your individual.
So that was a common thing, wasn't it? That we were being told from the community was like, they like the Warhammer 40,000 as a game, but there's a lot of rules to carry around, right? There's rules bloat in terms of the things you have to remember, but also the amount of books that you need to take with you when you play a game. And you've got less things to remember, less things to know about your opponent's army, but the variety of it in terms of like the choices you have.
And army building itself, as we just saw back there, I don't know if we'll go back to that one image we had just before this one. Army building itself has simplified. And it's when we say it's simplified, it is a much more accessible thing to get into, and we've done a lot of interesting things with the rules.
It wasn't that difficult to begin with compared to like what I've heard about Age of Sigmar. I've heard Age of Sigmar can be kind of crazy to build an army in. I didn't think 40K was that bad, but hey, simpler is always better.
Your warlord, you take up to 3 of any data sheet. or up to 6 of any basically troop or dedicated transport data sheet, and that's it. And so you need to have a warlord, and then you take up to 3 of most units. Additionally, there's been a great deal of work in putting things like what used to be individual unit stratagems and other abilities into the data sheet.
It'll be nice not to spend $200 on rule books. Exactly. Yeah. 100%.
To work with this type of army building. A good example being that a Space Marine captain might have a really powerful ability, but only one model per turn can use that ability, and so taking a second or third one isn't necessarily a value add. And there's many different units that, instead of there being a stratagem where after your unit shoots and targets a unit, now your other units get a benefit against it, there might be a key unit that provides that buffer benefit to your army. And so working in a combined arms way and leveraging different data sheets into your army in an innovative way is oftentimes, by design, much more impactful and useful and interesting than simply taking 3 of one thing and 3 of the other. So army building has been simplified, but the depth and interest in actually building a diverse force has been a major focus for how the data sheets have been built and how the army rules have been designed.
So every unit basically has got their thing. Like they've got the thing that they bring to your army. So
absolutely,
in a way that at the moment you might be relying on stratagems or something to do a particular niche or to fill a particular need. A lot of the time, the unit and the data sheet will allow you to do that. So that's why you take that particular unit.
Much greater focus on your army doing the work of being an army, as opposed to how can I take the most optimal units and then use my stratagems or the sort of front of my book to do all of the work.
Yeah, so I think we had an example data sheet that might be worth talking through some of the things, because it looks quite a lot different from the data sheets we have at the moment.
Data sheets are heavily different, and with the decision to index, there's also the opportunity to revamp the way a data sheet looks and works and is designed. Here you can see the new termagants, which is quite cool. They have an ability that focuses on how the unit behaves and is very thematically tied to them.
I guess one of the things before we get too into it is that the data sheet does look quite different, but actually the effect in terms of what it does in the game is not a million miles away from the way that Warhammer 40,000 works today. So
yeah, it's
going to seem very familiar. It's not a move to something like Age of Sigmar where every unit hits or wounds on a fixed number or something like that. Instead, it's still very similar to what you'll remember or recognize from Warhammer 40,000 today. But the ranged weapons and melee weapons and things like that have been moved into their own profile. You'll notice that attacks and ballistic skill and weapon skill and strength.
Yeah, they still exist. They're just attached to the weapon rather than about the fighter.
That allows us to do a wide variety of things with the way that the units are designed, such as something like chainswords or a Space Marine Captain's Power Fist versus a Space Marine Sergeant's Power Fist. Those things can all be somewhat different, and they can
I love the progression of the data sheet with the weapons. Like, this makes so much sense. Yeah, 100%. Have like the stats that are pertinent to the ranged weapons. Put them in the ranged weapon stats. Like, let them have their own. Like,
establishes the value that each model in a unit has if it is within range of an objective marker. So a unit of 10, now things like objective secured as a rule, those are gone. Instead, it's reflected with the individual units. Each model may have a different objective control characteristic. So each termagant is worth effectively 2 points if it's within range of an objective, whereas something that may be bigger or more robust but isn't really focused on grabbing objectives may only have an OC value of 1.
But it also means things like knights, which
have a much higher
particularly struggled with objective control, can actually now count as lots of... the OC could be quite high, and they could... You know, one grot doesn't beat one knight, sort of thing.
It's definitely an improvement in the way we design models for function, because again, when you look at things like what does optimal mean, is some of the folks who play the game at some levels focus on. Instead, you can go, well, this unit may not have the same damage output as another unit, but it's much, much better at grabbing objectives, which still remain a very key
I imagine
part of
termagants are going to be relatively cheap, right? So that's probably one of the cheapest...
I don't think they're going to cost the same as a Terminator.
But that's one of the most efficient ways to fill the board with objective control.
Absolutely, which is exactly what termagants tend to do. And we've done some things to make the units actually reflected in their datasheet abilities in a very interesting way that reflects how their actual lore works. There's a whole bunch of work done to look at their lore, at their IP, and make sure that the abilities actually reflected that. In the case of the scuttling termagants that are very sneaky, can tend to be difficult to pin down. When you get within 9 inches of a unit, the unit gets to move in reaction.
So that's very reactive compared to the current edition.
And there's a ton of addition of reactive abilities and reactive stratagems and reactive datasheet abilities into the game, so that you're playing a lot more of an interesting game with your opponent during their turn. So there's less phases, and there is a greater investment in abilities and stratagems, things that work during your opponent's turns.
I like that. That's
the
cool.
game itself is a much more dynamic experience when you play.
Yeah. So we got a couple of people noticing...
Simplify it, but still give me a lot of things I can do.
I think one of the things worth saying is that because this is a re-indexing of the game. We've also had the opportunity to look at the things like durability and strength and how common AP is across the entire game.
There are two major changes that are worth focusing on. That one, in general, lethality is down. That doesn't mean that it's down to a degree that might remind someone of editions many moons ago.
You still don't want to stand out in the open in front of a devastator.
You're probably going to get shot in the open if you do stand in the open. But the game is going to be a little bit less lethal than it is today. Cover is going to work a little bit differently. We're going to talk about
AP
all
is
of this
a little bit
stuff over
rarer.
time. AP is a little bit lower on average. And then there's also a stratification of strength and toughness when it comes to larger monsters and vehicles. Today is very much the case where you tend to see very few things that are different from, like, for instance, toughness 7.
Yeah, you cap out at about 8, don't you? It's very, very rare to have anything that's higher than 8.
So if your army has a large amount of access to strength 8 weaponry, strength 7 weaponry, it really is able to wound almost anything in the game pretty reliably, and that's no longer going to be the case. I'm not going to spoil anything for you, Eddie, but there definitely is a much, much higher level of toughness.
Well, there's vehicles that have toughness higher than 10.
Or there's vehicles that have toughness higher than 11.
Well, there you go.
And what that does is it creates a much better stratification of the game so that having dedicated role units to deal with different threats is much more of a real component, as opposed to, gosh, I sure have a lot of strength 8 in this army. I guess I wound everything on 3s or better. And so that kind of brings back not quite the same as armor values back in the day, where certain things couldn't hurt anything, but a much more robust stratification.
Yeah,
of the
so
different
you
types
couldn't,
of
for example, I'm just going to invest heavily in plasma, and that's going to solve the game for me because I've got all the 7 and 8 strength I need.
Yep, because while toughness went up on many units, in many cases strength did not go up on many weapons. So a plasma gun has not changed materially in its strength. Its AP might have even changed downward, whereas the units that used to be wounded on 3s by a supercharged plasma gun now may only be wounded on a 5 by them.
Wow, that could be big.
Substantial changes involved there, and of course the data sheets, you're going to see many more of them in the time to come. Eddie, I know we won't want to talk too much about it so that you can talk all about it.
Yeah, so we will cover loads and loads of the rules over on the community site in the coming weeks and months. A couple of other things are worth talking about. Boarding actions and boarding patrols from the latest Arcs of Omen books. They are compatible with the new edition of Warhammer 40,000. So if you've been collecting yourself a little 500-point combat patrols of infantry to go diving into Space Hulks, they will absolutely still be able to do that in the new edition.
That's nice.
So you can take all those recently constructed
They just
armies
came out
with
with this
you,
whole new like
go
rule
to
set, and
really
all of the
for them to be like, well, yep, all right, see you later, we're gone.
To be that way, so that if you've been
Maybe now
investing
I
in those
can
books
make
and
my
using
all
story, they've
cultist
told
army and
the
it
rules
not
themselves.
suck.
None of those are
Maybe,
validated by the
we'll
release of the
see.
edition. They haven't been taken away. It's not a short-term use. They'll be usable well into the future.
Yeah, which is really cool. And then there is another interesting way to play Warhammer 40,000. So Combat Patrol is a new thing in Warhammer 40,000, a brand new way to play the game. And the way that this works is different from the way Combat Patrol works today. The way it works is that you pitch Combat Patrols against each other. So the way you choose your army is you pick up any of the Combat Patrol boxes that we make, and that is your force. You can build it however you want out of that box, and it is balanced and pitched against other Combat Patrols in a similar way that you might play something like Kill Team, where you have a preset list of units. The rules for Combat Patrol are a little bit different from Warhammer 40,000, so maybe slightly simpler in places. There might be slightly less access to some of the choice, but fundamentally, you are playing Warhammer 40,000 at a very accessible level. And it's really cool for a couple of reasons. One of them is that if you want to start a new army, it gives you a very, very accessible way to try them out, basically. So you don't need to put yourself together 2,000 points worth of models before you can start rolling dice and have a satisfying game. You can play Combat Patrol and have a really good, fun game balanced against lots of other armies. And the other thing is that if you like to dip your toe into lots of different forces, so you're a kind of hobby butterfly, I suppose, and you're like, oh, I like playing with Chaos, but I also like my Orcs, and I quite like those new Eldar models that came out, and I like a bit of this, then you can jump between lots of armies, again, without needing to necessarily collect full forces with Combat Patrol.
That's my kind of Warhammer. Keep it small, give me a lot of variety here. Let me play all the different armies.
The full-size 40k game, they're very, very minor. So architecturally, it is the exact same game. And what you might see as a change is because Combat Patrol is meant to be both streamlined and easy to play and also accessible to newer players, you might have a unit that has 2 datasheet abilities, A and B, and they are relatively simple in the Combat Patrol. When it moves up to the full size of 40k, that same datasheet is going to have basically the same abilities, but maybe a little bit more robust or more broad sweeping for the full-size game. It's not going to be completely different abilities, and so Combat Patrol is going to very easily navigate into full-size 40k, but it's built and being actively balanced pretty aggressively every day by the studio so that whatever Combat Patrol you want and the rules for it are free as well, and will evergreen be free. You buy that combat patrol, it is built to be played against all of the other combat patrols the way it is out of the box.
Nice.
It's a really, really nice new way of playing 40k.
Makes it easier to bring in some new people now.
Like, I just go buy. I wanted to answer is there's some questions there about
single
Forge World
box
rules. Forge World models for Warhammer 40,000 will also get free data sheets that you can use in the new edition. So if you've got your Gargantuan Squigoth, it's a great kit. Why would you not, right?
Of course, Eddie brings up the Gargantuan Squigoth. It's one of the things we talk about all the time.
You can still use it.
So all Forge World rules will be taken care of. They'll be free, of course, just like all the index rules are on day one. It's worth mentioning we have a new app.
Yep.
It works 100%, which is one of the important things we're really excited about, is a fully functioning army builder. All of the rules available in it again, all of the points free and digital on day one.
Yep.
And so we're fairly excited about all of these new things that are coming to fore that should make the game more accessible.
When? They haven't said when. When is this coming?
If you play today, you will be able to play fully with no caveats or asterisks on day one of the new edition.
This summer, this winter,
one of the questions that's
next
popped up
year.
Quite a lot I just wanted to address is Crusade. So Crusade is absolutely, definitely still a part of Warhammer 40,000.
Very, very big part of it.
There will be some ways to, if you've been crusading for the past 3 years and you've had a good time, you've taken your troops through all sort of battlefields to the distant corners of the galaxy, there will be some ways to port that army into the new edition, which is pretty cool. There will also be some brand new expansions for Crusade. So, the new edition starts with the 4th Tyrannic War. That might give you a sense of where
Just a little bit of a hint where
some of the first Crusade expansions might go. But if you enjoy Crusade, and lots of people do, there is still definitely ways to engage with that in the new edition.
It's fair to say that Crusade was one of the big hits of the previous edition, and I don't think it's going anywhere. We're doubling down on it on all fronts, really, whether it's in our event scene with things like the Grand Narrative, whether it's in organized play as we start to connect more of a narrative element to that, all sort of globally, or whether it's, of course, in the revitalization and release of effectively Crusade 2.0. But we don't want to spoil everything on just the first preview. We'll give Eddie and his team all the time in the world to share all this excitement over the coming weeks to come.
Yeah, so new edition of Warhammer 40,000 will be coming in summer. We have a few weeks and months yet before we get there. So keep checking out warhammercommunity.com.
3 to 4 months.
You can sign up to a newsletter to find out all the news as it happens.
See it.
We've got loads of stuff to show you, including new miniatures. We'll talk about all the new rules we've mentioned in loads more detail.
Wow.
All the new lore, everything about it. Follow along on warhammercommunity.com and keep up to date.
We could talk your ear off all night long. Thank you for getting up so early or so late, depending upon your personal time zone, to share this time with us, to share the excitement with us. We've actually done it twice now, once live for Adepticon and once live for all of you. It's been a pleasure. Eddie, thanks for having me.
Did you have a favorite? Obviously, the new Warhammer 40,000 is pretty cool, but did you have like a favorite thing in the other previews we had?
I was a big fan of the Lion.
It's pretty cool.
It's always cool to see when a primer comes up. But honestly, I'm going to tell you that the Seraphon, I mean, they scratch an itch for me that connects to everything from, classic movies of yore to owning every single dinosaur book growing up. And it's one of the armies that I'm actually actively collecting and painting now. So I can't pick just one thing. Suffice to say, it's an exciting summer and year to come for Warhammer.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
It's going to be a really good time ahead for every single game system. Basically, is getting treated.
I was a little worried about 10th edition because of the money.
Keep you up any longer. You can hear more in the future. Eddie, thanks for having me.
But
see you guys.
Now knowing that all the rules are going to be free and everything, like that changes everything. Like bring on 10th edition. That's awesome. Be able to just keep using what I'm using, get the new rules, not be like, all right, now I got to spend $200 on rule books. That's incredible. Like that changes everything. That's so awesome. That's one of those things that people have been wanting for years from Games Workshop, but all they've done is just charge more and more and make more and more things for us to buy. So like obviously their main the facade they put on, the mask they put on for everyone is like, oh, you're just like money hungry. You don't care about any like the players, like you're just in it to make money, which is, I mean, they're a business. Yeah. But when there's such a tight knit, like such a massive community, like you'd think they'd like make it more community friendly for like more people to play. And so for years it's been like, come on, GW, like, what are you doing? So for them to be like, hey, yeah, rules are finally free. Like, oh man, it's awesome. Jake, you bring up a good point though. Watch the starter box be $500. See, that's the problem. Yeah. Like, all right, you don't have to spend $200 on books, but now you have to spend $500 on the box set or whatever. But yeah, that's not ideal. Not ideal in that situation. I don't know. I hope they have, now that the rules are free, I guess what I hope is that there are different versions of the box set, though. They usually have different versions, but I hope they have, usually it was like the size of the army. I hope instead of having different versions that have different size armies, I hope it's like, oh, this one is just the armies. This one comes with the base rules. This one comes with, recently they've been doing like new box sets that have like the rules and like an art print, which is just like, I don't care about the art print. Like, just give me the dang minis. So yeah, like if that's the case, if it's like, okay, you can buy the starter box with the core rule book, like a special edition, 'cause that's like with Indominus, I got like the, it's over there on the shelf, but like the nice special edition core rule book, like it just has different artwork on the front than like the normal one you buy now. Like that would be sick. Like I honestly, even though like I don't need the core rule book, like I probably would pick that up just to have at least the core rules on paper. All the codexes and stuff, 100%. I'll just use the data sheets that they give away for free. But yeah, then if there's a cheaper version that doesn't have the core rule book, like heck yeah, like totally gonna go for that. I don't know. I hope they do something like that, because that would be a bummer if they're like, oh, okay, we're still gonna do our starter kits and then force us to buy the core rule book, even though like, oh, but I just want the minis from it. I don't want the book. Like I don't need the book. I don't want to pay for the book. So I don't know. That was awesome. That was a great preview. All the stuff they showed at the beginning with Lion looks fantastic. I'm trying to remember what all they talked about. There's no recap up yet online. I just looked. The new Seraphon models looked amazing for Age of Sigmar, and obviously 10th edition looks amazing. I know they talked about more stuff, but those are like the big things that I cared about. Everything looks cool. I'm excited. Warhammer is looking real good for this next year. So if you're a newbie, if you're interested, I know right now I'm the only one on the Super Gamer Boy squad that's into Warhammer, but if anyone else is looking to get into it, this is the year. Free rules, combat patrols. You can just spend like $100-$150 on your core set. I think that's how much they are, right? They're not too terribly priced if I remember right. Let me look that up right now, because you can already get them. Combat. I have a million tabs open. Combat patrols. Okay, so they're $160, but it's like $160 and you have like an army that you can just play with right out of the box, and they're meant to play with each other. So that's I know for a lot of people like $160 for a board game, but for Warhammer, like that's not bad. That's not bad. You're getting a lot of minis. Some of these armies, like that's a lot of minis. And the fact that now like they're all designed to play nice, like that's awesome. That's awesome. I've had a lot of guys want to try it until they saw the rule books. Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, man, with this, making it easy with the combat patrols, having the free rules that are simplified, the easy to read data sheets, like heck yeah, this is going to bring in so many more people to play Warhammer. Like that's the thing. It goes back to like, the argument was always like GW would never do it because they want to make more money. But honestly, they're probably going to make more money now giving away the rules away for free than before, because now people are like, oh, I don't have to buy crazy expensive rule books. I'm going to buy the minis. And, so just get more people in the hobby. So it's a win-win on everyone's side, honestly. People who are already in the game don't have to buy the new rules, and people making the game gonna make that sweet, sweet cash. So, all right, well, it is 9:38. I thought this was only going to be like a 45-minute long thing, and I have a super early flight tomorrow. I'm going to be leaving for the airport at 4:30. So I'm going to sign off here. Thank you all who stopped by to hang out with me while I chatted Warhammer. I appreciate y'all. If you want more Warhammer hobby stuff, over on youtube.com/supergamerboys, I've been doing the weekly Good Vibes with Garrett, where I just sit down, and the focus is not Warhammer or the hobbying. I am doing Warhammer or hobbying stuff while the video is happening, but really it's more just me. It's like a vlog, like a story, like where I just tell stories from my past, whatever, living in Papua New Guinea, or doing how I got into Warhammer, stuff like that. So if you're interested at all but you want to watch me paint a mini, try out the new Vallejo Express colors, want to watch me make some put together models, clean up models, I think the one coming out next week, a little preview, I experimented with some basing materials. So if you want to see some winter themed basing techniques, don't expect a full tutorial, but I played with some elements on stream that I'd never touched before, and I was really excited. My brother told me about them. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna give this a shot. So check out Tuesdays Good Vibes with Garrett. It's come out next week. All right, that's it for tonight. Thank you so much. Catch us over on social media at Super Gamer Boys. I'm over on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Morlang. And we'll see you next time.